Welcome back to the channel. This is Ready Storm and you are watching first part of What If Naruto and Kushina were sent to Mutant Nation by Minato. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Kushina opened her eyes slowly. She gazed up at a strange ceiling. Her eyes took on a bewildered expression. Is she in a medical facility? There is no way that's possible. The final remnant of Minato's spirit was to be sealed inside Naruto. She jumped up. She bit her lip in agony as pain shot through her entire body. The chamber's doors opened. A young man rolled into the room in a wheelchair. He had good eyes and a bald head. I see you are finally awake. I am Professor Charles Xavier. I must admit I didn't expect you to wake so soon, stated Charles. Kushina uttered, I don't understand you. Charles laughed. He started talking in a foreign tongue. Forgive me. I assumed you knew English. My name is Charles Xavier. I found your son in the middle of the city. It was quite a scene. But do not worry. I made sure that no one would ask any questions. Kushina's expression softened. My son, is he okay? Is Naruto okay? Charles pointed to the right side of her bed and said, he is fine. Though I bet he has been missing his mother. When Kushina turned around, she saw a baby dozing beside her in a tiny bed. As she gazed down at her son, her eyes grew softer. Naruto. She touched his stomach with her fingers. She was shocked to discover that she had very little chakra to channel. It was sufficient to initiate a seal that did not appear. Kushina's eyes grew wide because she was unable to detect even the slightest hint of demonic activity. Charles said, I found this on you, and gave her a scroll. She picked up the scroll and unfolded it. To my darling, I am aware that we had a plan, but I was unable to carry it out. I have a deep affection for Konoha, but my love for you and Naruto is far greater. I acted in this way as a father, not as a Hokage. I used the Kyuubi as a source to activate a space-time jutsu in order for you to survive and be able to care for Naruto. I then channeled what was left of my chakra into you. You will be taken to a different era. If the space-time jutsu is effective, an era that is likely to feel like a completely different world instead of becoming a Jinchuriki who will be feared and despised by others for a crime he did not commit. Naruto will be able to grow up as a typical boy. I sincerely hope you will pardon me for being so self-centered. Know that Naruto and you will always be loved by me. I sacrifice myself for you both. Love, your idiotic husband. Kushina's face broke down in tears. She held the letter close to her chest and said, Minato, you idiot. Knowing that her son would grow up to be a typical child rather than a Jinchuriki made Kushina smile. Charles said something. Kushina's eyes grew wide as his voice played in her mind. Ma'am, I would like to offer you a place here at the Institute. He spoke again without moving his mouth. I'm sorry for reading your thoughts, but considering the situation in which I found you, I felt compelled to do so. I think we should discuss the new era you have entered now that I am certain you pose no threat. Kushina took a stern look. After 4 years, Xavier Institute. The air was punched by Naruto. He had on a white sash and a white karate gi as Naruto put what she had taught him into practice. Kushina observed from a bench. She was dressed in tight blue jeans, black sandals, and a white tank top with no sleeves that exposed a good amount of cleavage. She had cut her long red hair, which used to fall past her waist, short enough to fall a couple of inches past her shoulders. She let out a little giggle as Naruto became distracted by a butterfly. Naruto-chan. Kushina grinned. Hee, sorry. Naruto smiled. He resumed his punching. Kicks now, said Kushina with great anticipation. Naruto kicked. Kushina was followed by Professor Xavier. I see Naruto is out training again. He certainly does have a one-track mind. Kushina grinned. He loves to train. Gets that from me. Minato much preferred to read or work on new techniques. I was always the one who preferred to use my fists to get the job done. Her face lit up with a feral grin. Charles looked a little alarmed. Xavier observed Naruto's training. Namikaze Kushina. She had come in a very strange fashion 4 years ago. She and her newborn child fell out of a black hole that had formed in the center of New York City. Thankfully, he had survived to wipe out everyone's memories of it. Then he had returned to the Institute with both of them. They all carried the X gene. He wasn't particularly surprised by that. According to Kushina, ninjas ruled during that era. He had a hunch that she had most likely come from a different dimension that had not been visited in the past. He was unable to provide evidence for the theory in any case. She was from a world full of ninjas with unique skills that were on par with his, with the exception of the odd seals she could create. She was no longer able to use her special methods. He still recalls being stunned when she used a grenade to make a piece of paper explode after drawing a seal on it. Despite not being able to use ninjutsu anymore, Kushina is still a formidable opponent. Her strength, speed, and reflexes were superhuman. The woman has a lot of experience and is a skilled assassin. All of his mother's skills and more were passed down to Naruto. Compared to other kids his age, he is stronger and faster. He is being trained by Kushina to master his abilities. She intended to teach him how to control his chakra, but she wasn't sure if she would teach him jutsu. Charles grinned and held out a card, saying, "If you want to go into town, there's a Chuck E. Cheese's. I was able to pull a few strings and get you a driver's license." Sugoi. Kushina instinctively switched back to Japanese. Charles sighed, "Please drive the speed limit," but the woman didn't even hear him. Naruto was seized by Kushina, who then hurried to the garage. The man laughed out loud soon after. He let out a moan as the van sped across the grass and nearly collided with the gates as it left the garage. It might not have been the best idea to give her a driver's license. "Take a break," Naruto cried. "That was so much fun. Can we go back tomorrow, please?" Kushina laughed. Chuck E. Cheese is a great place for kids. "Calm down, Naruto-chan. If you behave properly, I'll think about going again. It is a living hell for adults. Children are yelling and scurrying around like untamed creatures. Without a doubt, she would only return there on very special occasions." Naruto surveyed every building in the area. He spent little time outside the mansion. He sprinted forward toward a window with a broad smile on his face. Kushina's eyebrow went up. She turned to face the window. "All ages can benefit from martial arts training in karate, taekwondo, and jiu-jitsu." "Wow." Naruto observed a dozen children practicing katas while punching and kicking. "Pretty good for civilians, but a bit sloppy," Kushina said. "Can I train with them?" Naruto asked, his eyes as bright as a puppy. Kushina dropped to his knees. "Naruto-chan, you are special. If I sign you up for such classes, then you have to promise to be careful. I don't want you to accidentally harm someone." Naruto smiled. "I promise." "Okay," Kushina said with a smile and a forehead kiss. Naruto gives his mother a tight hug. Manhattan. 3 years later. Kushina jumped silently from one roof to another. She was dressed in black pants, black gloves, tight black shirt, and black ninja sandals. She wore the same metal plate of armor over her forearms and over her chest, which is also on her back. She moved silently, from one spot to another, like a shadow speaking into the communicator. Kushina asked, "Am I getting close, old man?" "Yes, he ought to be in the park." Further on in her mind, Charles said, "I'm using my powers to make people around the park unable to see him." Kushina leapt over the ledge, flipped in midair, and landed lightly on top of a car, saying, "That still creeps me out." When she saw a tree, she leapt 10 feet into the air and landed softly on the branch. She saw a little boy stumbling with his hands over his eyes, and a smile came to her face. A year older than Naruto. He has a cute face, a slim build, and short dark brown hair. Scott staggered ahead. He didn't know where he was. All he knew was that he was unable to open his eyes and return to the orphanage. Everything he looked at would be destroyed if he opened his eyes. His eyes emitted this strange beam. When the police attempted to apprehend him, he was able to blast them before escaping. The voice of a woman said, "Be careful, you're going to trip over a root." He stopped. Scott muttered, "Thanks," and stepped forward cautiously. He stepped over the root after feeling it. "The name is Kushina. Kushina Namikaze. If you like, I can offer you place to stay. Be better than walking around at night with your hands over your face," Kushina replied. "No thanks, I am fine," Scott replied. Kushina's expression turned irritated. "Okay, listen up, kid, don't make me kick your ass. I am trying to be nice." Scott said, "Leave me alone," and took his hands away as an optic red beam blasted out, striking the playground slide and blowing it up. Kushina sprang into action. "That's it, you pissed me off." Scott was knocked unconscious after taking a punch to the face. "You weren't supposed to hurt him, Kushina." Kushina sulked. He was being a pain. "Please return him to the aircraft." Yeah, annoying old man," Kushina said. Tossing Scott, she started to run, leapt onto a window ledge, and then leapt onto a building's roof. Before long, the woman disappeared into the darkness. The Xavier Institute. Scott rubbed his head slowly as he woke up. He sat up and let out a groan. He looked around, seeing everything in red, and jumped in fear. He closed his eyes rapidly. "It's okay, Scott, you don't need to worry about destroying anything. Open your eyes," said a soft voice. Scott asked, his eyes closed. "Who are you?" "You can call me Charles Xavier. I am a mutant like you." Scott heard a voice in his head, and his eyes widened in shock. He turned to face Charles Xavier. The Professor. Charles smiled amiably at him. "My eyes, you cured?" Charles gave a headshake. "I didn't cure you, Scott, right now. You are wearing a pair of ruby shades that are tricking your mind into thinking that your eyes are activated. It isn't a cure. There is no cure for us who possess the X gene." Scott scowled. "X gene? We are mutants, Scott, a gifted few who are born with special abilities. It may seem like a curse right now, but what you have is a gift." Charles grinned. "I would like you to stay here at my institute and learn how to control your powers. You will also meet others who have special abilities." Scott's eyes took on an anxious expression. There was nowhere else for him to go, and there's that crazy woman out there who's probably trying to find him. He had benefited greatly from Professor Xavier's assistance. Scott chose to have faith in the professor. Charles grinned. "Okay. Outside, Scott went outside after Professor Xavier. They went into the backyard together. Scott was shocked to learn that the professor owned all of this. He could hardly make out the front gates in the distance, and it was the largest mansion he had ever seen. Voices rang in his ears. Professor Xavier grinned. The other two residents are over there, Kushina Namikaze and her son, Naruto Namikaze. Scott's eyes went wide. Kushina Namikaze? He asked. That is the crazy woman who attacked me. Naruto started giggling. He clenched his sides and dropped his bakken, raising her fist. Kushina struck her son in the head. He rolled around on the ground and burst out laughing again. Shut up! Kushina screamed. Naruto chuckled. Crazy woman, that fits you perfectly. With a sigh, Professor Xavier watched Kushina start beating Naruto. Kushina turned to glare at the boy, and Scott's expression changed to one of fear. I am not crazy. I was trying to help you out, but you were being ungrateful, said Kushina. Naruto dabbed at his tears. I like him. My name is Naruto. What's your name? Scott. Scott said uneasily. This is my crazy mother. She's not so bad once you get used to her, laughed Naruto. I'll kill you. Kushina grabbed Naruto, but he fled shortly after as he fled for his life. Naruto laughed. Scott smiled a little, then burst out laughing. Xavier, the professor, laughed. The atmosphere was definitely lightened by those two. Take a break. Entering the living room, Naruto peered around. He looks down, above, left, and right. Everything was crystal clear. He crossed the room with a water gun. In silence he dove beneath the table. When he heard a noise, he listened for more noises. As he pumped the water gun, his hand extracted a walkie-talkie from his pocket. Shades. I am in the living room. No sign of crazy woman. What is your position? Over, said Naruto. A hushed voice returned. Scott demanded. Kitchen is clear. Fox. How come you get the name Fox? Sounds cool, right? Naruto smiled. Scott declared. I want a better name. Naruto's expression became thoughtful. I got it. We'll call you Cyclops. That sucks. Perfect, Cyclops it is, Naruto's voice said. The walkie died. I want. Oh crap, she is here. Help, it said. I'm coming. Naruto sprinted into the kitchen from the living room. The kitchen was empty when he rushed in. Ready to fire, his eyes took on a bewildered expression as he walked around. After giving his head a quick scratch, he turned to go. When he came out, Cyclops was being held captive by the crazy woman. Kushina smirked and said, surrender or your friend gets it. Naruto gave a salute. I'm sorry I couldn't save you from crazy woman. I'll make sure your death won't be in vain. Kushina scowled. Her face broke into a grin. She let Scott go when Scott raised his water cannon and pointed it at Naruto. His eyes widened in shock before entering the kitchen. The two started shooting at Naruto, who was completely soaked. Traitor! Naruto screamed. Scott chuckled. You just betrayed me first. Kushina grinned and said, just surrender and we'll think about letting you off easy. Declaring, I will never surrender. Naruto took a water balloon out of his pouch as water blasted against the wall. He quickly drew his head back after peeking around the corner. You can't win, Scott expressed. Kushina chuckled. It's time you lose, dear son of mine. Naruto smiled. Ah, he exclaimed as he hurried from the kitchen, throwing the water balloon. It exploded as it hit Scott in the face. Scott let out a cry as he collapsed backward. Covered in water, Naruto raised his weapon, but Kushina began showering him with water. Before he could fire, he stumbled and fell to the ground after being blinded by water splashing into his face. Kushina approached him and laughed. She was soaked with water after Naruto rolled around and threw a second water balloon, hitting her in the chest. Ha ha ha. A full-fledged water war broke out as the three of them started laughing until the last drop of water was gone. It continued. Xavier, the professor, rolled into the room. He stopped when he noticed the broken lamp on the floor, the couch, the chair, the wet carpet, and a lot of other damage. Scott, Kushina, and Naruto all froze. Xavier said sharply, didn't I ask you all to play these games outside? Naruto and Scott were shoved forward by Kushina. She turned and fled, and the two boys fell as her laughter filled the room. Naruto screamed angrily, it is their entire fault. Professor Xavier gave Scott and Naruto a stern but amused look as they looked up at him. There was a groan from the boys. After a year, Master Ryan observed as Naruto defeated a boy 3 years his senior with ease. With a smile on his face, Naruto deflected a high kick and then raised his arm to block a straight left punch. After entering the boy's guard and snatching up the shirt, Naruto flipped the 40-pound heavier boy over his back and onto the mats. The 10-year-old boy let out a moan. A 10-year-old boy who is 50 pounds heavier and a full foot taller can be defeated by an 8-year-old. Both boys bowed to one another. Ms. Namikaze, Master Ryan said as he approached the attractive young lady. Kushina bowed. Ryan, can I help you? It has been 4 years since I started to train Naruto in the martial arts. He is one of the most gifted students I have ever taught. Unfortunately, I only teach the basics. I would recommend finding a professional dojo that can truly develop his talents. It would be a waster for him to stay here when he has already reached the rank of black belt in my dojo, stated Ryan. Thank you. Kushina grinned. She turned to see Naruto laughing with a few of his pals. He had a great time visiting this place. I will speak with him. It is his decision to make. Ryan bowed. I understand. Take a break. Naruto was given a vanilla ice cream by Kushina as he consumed the ice cream cone. Naruto grinned broadly. So, Master Ryan says that you are the most gifted student he has ever trained, laughed Kushina. Naruto reddened. Really? I try my hardest. Watching you spar reminded me of your father. He was quite good at taijutsu, laughed Kushina. I am going to be even stronger than him. I'll be stronger than you, laughed Naruto. Kushina slapped him on the head and asked, is that so? Then she started to tickle him, and he laughed. You'll need to work really hard to get stronger than me. By the way, Master Ryan thinks you should find a more professional dojo to train at. He says that you'll benefit more from it. Okay. Naruto smiled. Kushina's eyebrow went up. Just like that? All your friends are at that dojo. Naruto grinned. I can still be friends with them. Kushina grinned with pride. Her son is developing into a decent man. Charles would have to assist her in locating a suitable dojo. It has the potential to significantly enhance Naruto's skills. The Xavier Institute. Scott and Naruto dashed down the steps. They were summoned to the living room by Professor Xavier via telepathy. It must have been something significant running into the study. The two leapt the final step. Professor Xavier and a cute 9-year-old girl were standing there. She had lovely emerald green eyes and short red hair. The girl stood beside Professor Xavier with trepidation. I would like to introduce the two of you to Jean Grey. She will be our newest student at the institute, said Xavier. Naruto smiled and said, nice to meet you. I'm Naruto Namikaze. I'm Scott Summers, said Scott with a smile. Jean grinned. Hello. Man. You got the same color hair as my mom. I hope you don't have her crazy multiple personalities, replied Naruto. Kushina approached Naruto from behind and gave him a headshake. Jean covered her mouth to conceal her laughter as she said, ignore my son. It's nice to meet you. I'm Kushina Namikaze. Unfortunately, I am his mother, Naruto complained in a cute way. Professor Xavier grinned. Welcome to the Xavier Institute, Jean. The dojo of Akisame. Kushina and Naruto entered a dimly lit but immaculate dojo. A 5'10" man who was taller than average sat on the mats and drank tea. He had a thin, well-groomed mustache, long, untidy brown hair, and a normal build with a little, strong muscle. The man was dressed in blue hakama pants with white tabi socks and a white shirt that was open at the torso. Kushina inquired, are you Master Akisame? Akisame replied, yes, please call me Akisame. How may I help you, ma'am? I came here to enroll my son in your jiu-jitsu classes. Naruto took a step forward. Hey Akisame sensei. Akisame's eyebrow went up. Refer to me as sensei when I haven't taken you as a student? That presumptuous. Naruto smiled and said, so when do we start learning, sensei? Kushina gave Naruto a head slap. Be more respectful. Akisame offered a laugh. Akisame patted his pants and got to his feet. Naruto ran forward without hesitation and said, you amuse me, kid. Come at me and show me what you know. Akisame lifted his arm and grabbed a fist. Akisame took a step back to avoid Naruto's leg sweep, which he had ducked low for taking advantage of the situation. Naruto turned around and leapt in Akisame's direction, landing a hurricane kick after catching Naruto's leg. Akisame twisted it and slammed him to the ground. Kushina gave a headshake. Kushina praised Akisame's technique, saying, at least knows what he is doing. Naruto was freed by Akisame. You have speed and power and know the basics of karate and taekwondo. Jiu-jitsu is very different from those martial arts. It focuses on mainly grappling, joint locking, and throwing techniques meant to disarm or disable a more defensive style of martial arts, not a straightforward attacking. Naruto sulked. That doesn't sound like fun. It sounds perfect. Maybe you'll learn not to charge head first into a fight, laughed Kushina. Naruto sulked. With a bill in hand, Akisame explained, this is the price of lessons. Kushina's gaze expanded. Her face broke into a grin. That won't be a problem, Charles. I hope you enjoy paying for it. When Akisame said, then let us get started. Come back in an hour, he gave Naruto a look. Akisame sensei's eyes took on a frightening expression, and Naruto went pale. Naruto was left alone with the frightening man after Kushina waved goodbye. After 3 years, Naruto smiled. He wrapped his finger around a kunai. Might as well give up. There is no way that you two are going to beat me. Professor Xavier had made him a new visor, which Scott adjusted. Think so, huh? Jean grinned. I am going to beat you both, Naruto assertively said. Come on, this is target practice. My mom used to be a ninja. No way I am losing this. Kushina looked amused. The dismissive wave from Naruto said, heritage is no guarantee of success. Her expression turned irritated, being aware of that expression in Kushina's eyes. Jean and Scott moved away from Naruto. Naruto never seemed to learn the lesson that those two had long since learned, not to enrage the woman. Scott, you will be trying to hit those training posts 20 feet away while only destroy the targets and nothing else. This will test your ability at aiming and controlling the power behind your optic blasts. Yes ma'am, Scott said with a nod. Kushina gestured toward a brick, cinder block, basketball, softball, and tennis ball, saying, Jean, I want you to use your telekinesis to lift each of the objects on the ground. The thing got heavier and bigger. Once you lift them, I want you to psychically push them into those baskets 10 feet away. This will help you learn how to levitate and also toss objects of varying weight. It will also help you regulate how much power you need to lift certain weights. Jean gave a nod. I understand. Kushina's gaze shifted to her son. She took out a remote control and pressed the button, saying, Naruto, 2 disc shoots emerged from the earth. You'll be using your kunai and shuriken to hit as many discs as you can. Naruto smiled. Too easy. Ready. Begin. Kushina jumped out of the way and landed safely away. She observed the training of her 3 pupils. Her face broke into a smile. Scott and Jean were doing pretty well. Naruto is doing just as well as she had anticipated. His lifelong training was evident, in contrast to the other 2. Furthermore, he didn't yet possess any unique abilities that he needed to learn. I believe the time has come. Room of danger. Okay. Time for you to learn how to control your chakra, Kushina replied. Naruto's expression brightened. Really? Awesome. Kushina moved in the direction of the wall. She stepped on it, ascended a few paces, and then bounded off. Her eyes took on a weary expression. His eyes were filled with wonder. Whoa! How did you do that? Naruto exclaimed. Kushina clarified, it's easy. I channel chakra to my feet and use it to stick to the wall. She dabbed at her forehead. She was only able to mold a small amount of chakra because her chakra coils were irreparably damaged. She threw Naruto a piece of chalk. He looked at it bewilderedly. Use it to mark your progress and get a running start. A ram seal was formed by Naruto. His chakra was directed toward his feet as he dashed ahead. A smile spread across his feet before he was blown off the wall and fell backward. Hitting his head, he was able to take 2 steps. Ah ha 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 ha! Erupted in laughter from Kushina. What happened? Naruto moaned. Too much chakra and you'll be blown off. Too little and you'll slip. Have to get it just right, laughed Kushina. Naruto smiled and said, no problem, I'll master this in no time. At night in her red pajamas, Jean walked down the corridors in silence. From the danger room, she heard a noise as she walked into the room. She let out a cute yawn. Naruto did not stop as he ran up the wall. He ran all the way to the top, and she watched in wonder before he fell. He reached out and nearly touched the top with his legs tucked in. Naruto began to flip down. He emerged from the spin like a pro, crouching on the ground and directing all of his energy there without causing any pain to his legs. Exhausted, Naruto fell to the ground. I'm so tired. I don't think sleeping on the floor, Jean remarked. Naruto sat up and said, Jean, what are you doing up this late? Jean sat down beside him and grinned. I could be asking the same thing. You could always train tomorrow. Naruto scratched the back of his head and smiled. He said, I want to train hard every day and grow as strong as possible. How come? Jean inquired. Naruto rested his arms back. My mother always tells me stories about my dad. He was this powerful warrior who fought in countless battles. The entire village looked up to him as a hero and he gave his life to save me and Mom. I owe him everything. He rose to his feet with eyes filled with grit. I want to be a hero just like him. The old man is always telling us to control our powers. It is because the world outside fears us. Think of all those mutants who don't have a home to go to out there all alone. I want to save them, or at least, I want to use my powers to help them. It isn't just them though. I want to help those who aren't mutants see that we are no different. I am going to show the world that we can live in peace. Naruto gave a stern expression. To do that I need to get stronger. I need to be strong enough to face the world. Jean reddened. He was so brave and attractive. In that one instant she no longer considered him a boyfriend. Naruto was now revered. She aspired to be as strong as him. She was strong enough to stand next to him. Naruto smiled sheepishly and said, kind of silly, huh? Jean grinned and said, no, I think it is a great dream. If anyone can accomplish it, I am sure you can all have to train harder as well so I can help you. Naruto smiled. Yeah, we'll become the strongest. Outside the danger room, Kushina leaned against the wall. She broke down in tears of pride. Did you hear that, Minato? As she wiped away her tears, she made a silent vow to support her son in realizing his dreams. Our son is growing into a great man. The air was filled with cheers. The crowd began chanting. Duncan. Grinning, Duncan positioned himself behind his center. Hut. The ball was hit to Duncan, who took 2 steps back and tucked it. His gaze swept across the field in search of an open reception. Duncan spun out of the way as a defensive end was thrown at him. He started running across the field after being blocked. Duncan ran full speed and was tackled from behind. A touchdown was signaled by the referee blowing his whistle. Gene squatted down and took a number of pictures. Duncan grinned and said, "Hey Gene, that for the yearbook?" "No, this is for my personal collection," Gene grinned. Flipping a quarter between his fingers, Scott sat in the stands. He had his sights set on a certain redhead who was conversing with Bayville High's standout quarterback. His face was frowning. Scott, leaning back against the bleachers, remarked, "I think I should have taken your advice and not bothered coming." Naruto's eyes were filled with boredom. He had changed a lot over the previous 6 years, and he said, "I should not have let you talk me into coming." He had short golden blonde hair, emotionless ocean blue eyes, and a 5'6" build. A muscular body without being too big. He was dressed in blue sneakers, baggy black jeans, black fingerless gloves, and a red t-shirt. Scott's hand dropped the quarter beneath the bleachers. Naruto and Scott watched as a hand reached out from beneath the bleachers to remove a wallet from someone else's back pocket, saying, "Aw man, my cash." "Looks like we got a pickpocket," Scott remarked. Naruto smiled. "Man, I just got a great idea for a prank." After massaging his temples, Scott struck Naruto in the arm. Todd took another wallet and grinned. "There is another ah." Todd was yanked to the ground and spattered with mud by a hand from behind. "If it isn't Todd the Toad," Duncan said with a smile. Hey guys," Todd said with a sheepish smile. Duncan's knuckles cracked. Todd gasped as Duncan picked him up and slammed him against a wooden beam, saying, "Looks like we need to teach you to have a little respect." Smirking were the other 2 football players. "Let him go, Duncan," Scott was saying. Duncan asked, "What do you care about this slimy toad?" "I don't care, but I don't like 3-on-1 odds. The wallets are still there. Let's just make him give back the money," Scott calmly replied. Todd gave a nod. "Yeah, I got the cash right here." Naruto smiled. "Or you can fight us instead. I never liked any of you anyways." Ignoring the 2, Duncan struck Todd with his fist. Scott rushed forward, snatched Duncan, and threw him at his 2 companions. Todd leapt to his feet. Todd was followed by the other 2 players. Duncan lay face down in the mud, his teeth clenched in rage. "Bad move, Summers." Scott raised his arms in self-defense, and Duncan got to his feet, prepared to fight, knowing that Scott could take care of Duncan by himself. Naruto took a step back. A fight broke out between the 2 boys. Jean emerged from beneath the bleachers. She caught Scott fighting Duncan and exclaimed, "Scott, Scott, no," out loud. Scott took a moment to look away from Duncan. In that moment, Duncan struck Scott in the face. When Scott hit the floor, his shades went out of his eyes. His eyes were open as his head rose after striking Duncan in the face. Naruto raised both arms as the red energy beam struck him and propelled him through the air. It exploded in a shower of fire after colliding with the propane tank. As the students hurried away from the flames, screams could be heard everywhere. The police and fire department arrived shortly after. Jean put out the fire with her psychic abilities. She picked up Scott's glasses. After noticing them on the floor, she heard a moan and turned to see Scott with his eyes squeezed shut. She knelt down and put his glasses over his eyes, saying, "Calm down, Scott, I'm here." Scott said, "Thanks, Jean," as he opened his eyes. As he moved through the smoke, Naruto coughed a lot. "I almost didn't switch in time. That would have hurt." "What do you 2 think you were doing fighting? You could have seriously harmed Duncan," said Jean with rage. Jean squinted and said, "Calm down, he's all right." Naruto gave a sheepish smile on Jean and Scott's shoulders. Naruto put his hand and said, "Okay, we're sorry, no time to talk about it right now. Police coming." In a puff of smoke, the trio vanished. When the police arrived, they could not find anyone. The Xavier Institute with a, "Ow." Naruto rubbed his head. Kushina narrowed her eyes at Scott, who cowered. Kushina said, "Stupid, that's the only word that comes to mind. We're sorry it happened, but we had good intentions." "Well, Shades had good intentions. I just wanted to fight," Naruto replied. Naruto received a second slap across the head from Kushina. After avoiding the second slap, Naruto smiled. "I didn't mean to lose control. Duncan caught me off guard," Scott said apologetically. "I know," Kushina said, tapping his shades, "but you need to be more careful. Those eyes of yours are only a gift when used properly. When not controlled, they're a destructive force that cause harm to others. That is true for all of us when we lose control, understand?" "Yes, ma'am," Scott said with a nod. Kushina grinned. "Next time, kick his ass," Naruto exclaimed with a hearty laugh. Scott grinned. She observed the 2 boys making their way to their rooms. Her face broke into a smile. "They're like brothers to each other." Aurora said, "The advice was good up until the end," as she walked through the front door. Kushina grinned and said, I believe that was where I offered my best advice. Munro Aurora, a strong mutant with weather-controlling abilities. When Aurora was younger and still able to walk, Professor Xavier had discovered him before he had even begun attending school a few years ago. She made the decision to visit the Institute rather than remain in Africa. Aurora came to the Institute in order to assist the upcoming generation of mutants. A figure in a black cloak with a hood that obscured their face followed Professor Xavier as he rolled into the room. Xavier said, Kushina, let me introduce you to Kurt Wagner, our newest resident. Kushina grinned. Hello Kurt. Hello, Kurt murmured. Xavier grinned and said, Kurt, there's no reason to be afraid. Kurt reached up, lowered his hood, and nodded. Kawaii! Exclaimed Kushina. Take a break. Scott rapped on the bathroom door and said, Come on Jean, we are going to be late. Naruto gave Scott a wave, dropping 10 feet and landing lightly on his feet. He leapt over the railing. He walked to the kitchen and let out a yawn. He touched the ground with a finger, and his eyes hardened abruptly. He sprinted to the cupboard underneath the sneak and opened it quickly, a smile spreading across his face. He took out a cup of instant ramen. There was something golden about the ramen. After saying a brief prayer, he put it in the microwave and filled it with a cup of water. The seconds slowly started to decrease from 3 minutes. His eyes darted around anxiously to make sure no one was approaching. He opened the door and grabbed the hot cup at 5 seconds because he could not wait any longer. He lifted his fork, ready to start eating, and a big smile spread across his face. The fork hid nothing. Naruto blinked. He looked over and saw his mother standing beside him with the ramen cup in her hand. Kushina said, No ramen for breakfast, and tossed it in the trash. No. Naruto exclaimed as he saw the ramen cup fall to the bottom of the trash and spill its contents all over the place. His entire world seemed to fall apart. He dropped to his knees. A defeated expression in his eyes. He drew a kunai and pointed it at his heart, saying, I failed you. I must commit seppuku. Kushina gave an eye roll. Come on, there is a new student staying at the Institute. Naruto rushed up to her and gestured with a finger, asking, How can you be so heartless? You just took away a precious life with no remorse? Kushina yelled, If you don't stop talking and get up, I'll kill you. Naruto followed grudgingly, complaining. Jean and Scott were already in the study, waiting. Naruto was shoved into the room by Kushina, and Professor Xavier grinned. I would like the three of you to meet Kurt Wagner. He will be staying at the Institute like you all. He is a mutant, though his mutation has become more physical in nature, said Xavier. Scott extended his head and said, Nice to meet you. That's Jean and Naruto. My name is Scott. Kurt held out his hand, displaying a 3-fingered, blurred hand. It took Scott by surprise when he said, Nice to meet you. Kurt went to pull it back because he thought it was fear. The hand was caught by Naruto. Dude, you're blue. That is so awesome. Xavier laughed. Naruto is also the son of Kushina. Jean grinned. It is great to meet you, Kurt. Kurt revealed an elf-like face as he lowered his hood. Naruto snapped his fingers and exclaimed, I got it. I am going to call you Smurf. It is an awesome name, right? Kurt said, Smurf? Both Professor Xavier and Scott sighed. Jean covered her mouth with her hand to conceal her laughter. Kurt couldn't contain his laughter as he said, Yep, as the first person to join the Institute I have non-challengeable rights to give out all nicknames. That is Shades, and next to him is Big Red. Naruto also burst out laughing. Jean and Scott looked irritated. According to Scott, and Naruto's nickname is Annoying. Naruto let out a sigh. Leave the jokes to the professionals. Alright Smurf, got any special powers besides being blue and cool? Kurt vanished in a puff of smoke. Grinning, he suddenly materialized on the opposite side of the room. Scott and Jean were taken aback and said, Maybe? Naruto had a Christmas-like glow in his eyes. Professor Xavier read Naruto's thoughts and moaned. Pranks were the evil that Kurt's abilities were going to be used for. Knowing that gleam, Kushina massaged her temples. Bavel high among everything else, Naruto detested one thing. School is that the explanation for this is straightforward. He was terrible at it. He had trouble recalling the dates of significant historical occurrences. He didn't understand science or math at all. His least favorite subject must have been language arts. All those spelling and grammar fixes. Writing was no longer enjoyable as a result. If someone remembered to use a comma or question mark, it shouldn't matter as long as they understood what he was saying. Gym was the only class he enjoyed in middle school. He had enjoyed playing football and basketball, but it soon became monotonous. He had to constantly suppress his powers to avoid being identified as a mutant. It was awful, but that's the way it is. Naruto went to get a book after opening his locker. Hey, Todd said, leaning against Naruto's locker. I wanted to say thanks for helping me out the other day. If you hadn't shown up I would have had my face pounded in, laughed Todd. You stick, Naruto remarked. Todd landed on top of the lockers after flipping up. It seems that we got a lot in common, you and I. Naruto lifted his arm and sniffed, saying, I don't see us having anything in common. Nope, I smell good. I saw you take that blast from Four Eyes. There's no way you survived that if you were normal people like us should stick together, Todd said, flipping back down and landing in a toad-like crouch. Come on, you know we both have special abilities. Naruto had no desire to do it in this world. There are some people who irritate others. Todd gave Naruto a nasty rub. He was unable to refuse a fellow mutant who was in need, though. Alright, come by the Xavier Institute and we can talk about hanging out, Naruto replied. Todd grinned as Todd leapt off. Naruto said, sweet, see you there. He spun around and slammed his head into the locker. It was awful to be the nice guy. Lunch. You did the right thing, Jean said. Scott scowled. Yeah, but it's still Todd. I just don't like that guy. Naruto reclined. I know how you feel. If he stays at the institute I am going to make sure he takes a bath one way or another. Jean rolled her eyes. She knew how they felt, but she didn't express it out loud. Todd isn't the cleanest or friendliest of men like them. He is still a mutant who must conceal his abilities. He was worthy of having a place where he was not forced to hide. The Xavier Institute is that location. The Xavier Institute. Kurt descended the stairs. He was startled when he heard lightning and thunder crackling outside a few minutes ago. The weather had been pretty pleasant for the weather in Bayville to change so rapidly. It must be extremely unpredictable. The mansion's doors were blown open by a strong wind. Ah! Todd exclaimed, slamming into Kurt after rolling around. The two leapt to their feet and circled one another. Whoa! Who are you supposed to be, you blue-furred freak? Replied Todd. My name is Nightcrawler and at least I don't smell like unwashed lederhosen, Kurt grumbled. Anger filled Todd's eyes. He detested being called a stunk as he vanished in a puff of smoke. Nightcrawler grinned and said, that's it. I am so kicking your ass. Todd took on air. Nightcrawler grinned and said, too slow. From atop the chandelier Todd leapt at Nightcrawler. Growling angrily, Nightcrawler landed on the ground. After leaping off Todd's back, Todd became even more irate when Nightcrawler flashed a smirk. Storm and Xavier rolled into the room. That will be enough. I have seen enough. Todd, you are welcome to join the institute if that is what you desire. Todd frowned. His tongue sprang out and wrapped itself around Nightcrawler's arm, saying, the only desire I have is to kick little blue boy's butt. The two of them vanished as Nightcrawler attempted to teleport away. Room of danger. In the danger room, Nightcrawler and Toad were back. Nightcrawler looked around and said, where are we? When Toad said, you're the one who brought us here. When a big metal claw emerged from the wall, the two gasped in shock and said, intruders detected, activating self-defense system. It attacked them, attempting to sever them in two as more and more machines turned on. Both jumped out of the way. Two green lasers were aimed at Toad, who let out a girlish scream before running for cover. Nightcrawler was hit by a tentacle after leaping onto the wall. A laser was aimed directly at him as he teleported into the air. Nightcrawler let out a gasp as he was pulled aside by an unseen force. You! Nightcrawler exclaimed, glancing up at Jean, who seemed to float in midair. Are you an angel? Jean grinned. I suppose I can be at times. Two lasers were destroyed when Cyclops fired two optic blasts as he narrowly avoided a laser. Toad let out a scream. He sprang forward, causing a steel wall to emerge from the ground. He slammed into it and let out a groan. He was surrounded by two more steel walls, leaving only one exit as if to crush him like a bug. A fourth wall arose and started to move. Yahoo! Naruto exclaimed as he leapt down and grabbed Toad before jumping out. Naruto threw Toad across the room at Cyclops, causing him to scream, catch the Toad. Nightcrawler teleported atop a laser firing apparatus and said, oh, I understand this is a training exercise. All I have to do is unplug it and it shuts off. The machine began to move around uncontrollably and fire randomly. As soon as he unplugged it, Naruto seized Nightcrawler and leapt away as Cyclops aimed a beam at the device. There was a shower of debris as the machine exploded. Toad gasped as Toad fled. Xavier exclaimed, forget this, I am out of here, instead. As he hit the ground, Naruto repositioned his green vest. He was dressed in black pants that were wrapped up at the shins, black ninja sandals, ironclad fingerless black gloves, and a green flak vest over a long-sleeved blue shirt. He had two gray pouches on the back of his waist. Glancing at Nightcrawler, Naruto said, man, that was fun. You okay? Xavier said, no, don't follow Todd, he is not ready to join us, just as Jean and Scott were about to follow. Nightcrawler's expression turned guilty. Nightcrawler teleported away in a cloud of smoke, saying, I don't think I am ready either. Thank you for everything you have done, but it is best I go. I'll talk to him, Naruto said with a smile and a hand seal. He disappeared in a tangle of leaves. Kushina gave a headshake. That could have gone better. A man with broad shoulders walked into the danger room. The man said, mind telling me what is going on? Take a break. There was a big black jet in the room where Nightcrawler appeared. His gaze shifted to the jet, And his eyes widened. He had never actually seen one. He emerged atop the jet in a cloud of smoke. It's cool, huh? Ah. Jumped Nightcrawler in alarm. Naruto was standing next to him. When he turned around, Naruto started giggling. How? Where? Naruto smiled. Did you think you were the only one with special powers? My mother used to be a ninja. She taught me everything that she knows. I am excellent at sneaking around undetected. Nightcrawler asked. A ninja? Like a real ninja? Yep. Grinned Naruto. So, thinking of leaving already? Nightcrawler averted his gaze. I have only caused trouble. I know. It is awesome. Nightcrawler said, staring at Naruto helplessly with a sly expression. Naruto rubbed his hands together. He put an arm around Nightcrawler. A broad smile spreading across his face. With our abilities, imagine all the trouble we can cause. We'll become the most legendary pranksters of all time. The whole world will tremble in fear of us. Naruto chuckled wildly. There was a smirk on Nightcrawler's face. You're crazy. Naruto gave a shrug. He extended his hand and said, maybe just a little bit. So are you in? I'm in. Nightcrawler grinned. Take a break. Kurt tried to eat a breakfast burger as he ran towards school. It was already 5 minutes later. When he glanced down at his watch, he checked to make sure no one was nearby before teleporting next to the building. While hiding behind a tree, Kurt ran into Principal Darkholme after stealthily turning the corner. Principal Darkholme. Kurt swallowed rapidly. She took his watch. Principal Darkholme scowled and said, watch isn't slow. Must be you. One more tardy and you'll be joining my after-school class. Kurt walked around her and said, yes ma'am, before rushing inside. Ex-Jet Jean inquired inquisitively, why me? How come the others weren't brought along? Xavier grinned. Because you are the one who can connect with this girl. What about the other mutant that Cerebro detected? The one in the foster home, Jean replied. Yes, Lance Avery's. I will handle that situation. I want you to focus on Kitty's parents. You are a model of what we are offering. No pressure, laughed Professor Xavier. Jean chuckled uneasily. Yeah, to think I passed up a relaxing midterm for this. Bavel High. Scott gave his temples a rub. Though Naruto couldn't see it through those shades, he gave his best friend a slightly irritated glance. Scott questioned, are you even listening? Yes. Jean went to go meet with a new student. The professor didn't want to bring the rest of us along, said Naruto with disdain. He gave a yawn. Why are you making it such a big deal? The old man knows what he is doing. I just wish he would have taken me so I didn't have to come to school. Kurt sat down beside the two and moaned. I swear Principal Darkholme is after my head. Naruto gave a wise nod. I agree. She is always yelling at me for no reason. Maybe if you two stopped breaking the rules, then you wouldn't have to see her so much, replied Scott. Naruto and Kurt exchanged glances. They both started laughing. Scott gave his temples a rub. He had these too, but why even bother? School. Kurt checked to make sure nobody was approaching. He took out his walkie-talkie and spoke softly into it. Coast as clear. Begin operation tidal wave. Roger. Naruto hammered in multiple pikes while walking on the ceiling. Then he fastened a big carp to it as Kurt watched Naruto stretch the carp over the four corners. He grinned. The ceiling appeared to have been covered with a tent due to the absence of windows. The carp cast a shadow over the hallway that nobody would notice. Naruto smiled as he extracted multiple storage scrolls from his pouch, swiping his blood across the seals with his thumb. He tossed them into the carp. The carp was filled with an unseen force that caused it to slightly sink. He lifted his walkie and unloaded 5 storage scrolls. Time. Kurt grinned and glanced at the clock. 1 minute, he said. Naruto smiled and said, I love it when a plan comes to fruition. Mission accomplished. Vanish. The two disappeared in twin clouds of smoke. A bell rang as soon as the classroom doors opened. Students began to swarm into the hallway from the safety of the stairs. Kurt gave it the thumbs up with a wave of his hands. Naruto released 2 shuriken, one on each side of the carp. Slicing through its corner, hundreds and hundreds of water balloons were dropped as the carp fell away. As the water balloons hit people and exploded, screams erupted. There was nowhere safe for the students to flee to. Naruto and Kurt burst out laughing as they fled the school. Tears were streaming down their faces as the two gripped their stomachs. Scott came out drenched and asked, how did you do it? Do what, my dear friend? Naruto asked naively. A deep gentleman's voice said, you know sir, you happen to quite wet, Kurt said. Naruto gave a finger snap. That is right, quite wet indeed. Tell me sir, what happened? Scott fought the impulse to take off his shades and turn them on Naruto, and Kurt laughed again and said, I hate you too. Naruto noticed Principal Darkholme and said, exit stage left. The two screamed in fear, lifted their legs, and started running while wildly waving their arms. Scott's smile twitched. The two were very clever at setting traps, he had to admit. Take a break. Logan went down the street on his bike. He sped up the road leading to the Xavier Institute's front gates, then abruptly he stopped. He raised his helmet and took a whiff of the air. There was a growl from him. Sabretooth. The Xavier Institute at full speed. Wolverine sped past Kurt and Naruto on his bike. After exchanging quick glances, the two turned to face Wolverine, who was just about to let the front gates open. Kurt got an interested glance. Where is he going in such a hurry? Naruto smiled. Want to find out? Let's do it. Kurt sprinted in the direction of the garage, taking the van. Of course, Naruto said as he climbed into the X-van's driver's seat. Suddenly Kurt appeared on the passenger side as the van blasted out of the institute. The engine roared to life. Take a break. In the garage, Wolverine growled and sniffed the air from between his knuckles. Metal claws protruded. Sabretooth. A huge man with protruding muscles roared out from behind a car, directly at Wolverine. Wolverine. Sabretooth snarled after falling backward. Wolverine flipped Sabretooth into a stone pillar behind him using his legs. With a painful grunt, Sabretooth shook it off. Wolverine leapt at Sabretooth. They wrestled for a while using his superior strength. Sabretooth threw Wolverine through one of the car's front windows. We're doomed to fall at each other's hands. Sabretooth grinned. Wolverine snarled, I didn't know you believe in all that philosophical crap, as Sabretooth threw him against a pillar. My turn. Sabretooth spun around and was kicked in the face by a spinning heel as Sabretooth staggered back. Naruto smiled. Nightcrawler, I think he needs a lift. Nightcrawler materialized behind Sabretooth in a pop. Going up? The two disappeared in a cloud of smoke and resurfaced at the garage ceiling. After releasing Sabretooth, Nightcrawler teleported to safety. Naruto leapt to his feet and gave Sabretooth a strong hurricane kick to the chest as he flew backwards into an elevator. Sabretooth let out a painful growl. The doors of the elevator closed and Wolverine charged in its direction. Sabretooth escaped, and Wolverine scowled. He turned to glare at Nightcrawler and Naruto. Wolverine snarled, I don't interfere in your battles, don't get in the way of mine, and brushed them aside. Naruto gave a headshake. Some people don't have any gratitude. We so kicked butt. Nightcrawler grinned. Of course. The two balled their fists together. The Xavier Institute. With a nervous expression on her face, Kitty walked beside Jean. She would be living with a number of strangers in a new state and city that is enough to frighten anyone. Two people were waiting for her when she descended the stairs. She believed that Jean was attractive, but the two people who were waiting for her were just as attractive, if not more so. The first is a woman with long white hair that reaches the middle of her back and chocolate skin. She was dressed in a long flowing purple dress and a white sleeveless shirt. The woman's face broke into a lovely smile. In contrast to the exotic beauty of the chocolate-skinned woman, the second is an equally beautiful woman who possessed it in a more natural way. She wore more relaxed, loose-fitting clothing, had darker red hair than Jean, and had all the right curves. Kitty, please meet Kushina Namikaze and Professor Aurora Munro. Aurora grinned broadly and said, It's good to meet you. Kushina smiled and said, Just call me Kushina, not Professor. Professor Xavier grinned. Kitty's cheeks flushed as two attractive boys entered the hangar and said, Here comes Scott and Naruto. Naruto leapt forward, grinning broadly. So you're the new girl. I hear you have an awesome power to walk through walls. I tried that once, but it didn't work out so well. Kitty laughed. I'm Kitty. Scott and that idiot is Naruto. With a, hey, Naruto pushed Scott aside. Naruto Namikaze, nice to meet you. Kitty glanced at Kushina and then at Naruto before asking, Namikaze? They both had the same smile on their faces. Kushina said, Yes, this annoying brat is my son. Naruto smiled and said, This crazy woman is my mother. Kushina gave Naruto a head slap. Kitty grinned. Perhaps it wouldn't be so bad to stay here. It certainly appeared to be enjoyable. As he began to extend his arms and legs, Naruto smiled, standing opposite the obnoxious brat. Wolverine's snarled claws exploded out from between Wolverine's knuckles, making a snicked sound. Naruto flicked his wrist, and two kunai materialized in each hand. The two squatted opposite one another. A kunai was thrown into the air by Kushina. It whirled around and descended as the kunai struck the ground point first. Naruto and Wolverine bounded toward one another, slamming metal against metal. Naruto's kunai was cut to pieces in a split second by Wolverine's claws. Naruto only needed a second to deflect the blow and kick Wolverine in the jaw straight up. Quickly regaining his footing, Wolverine staggered backwards and swung his claws, slicing through 3 shuriken. Getting better claws, Naruto smiled. Wolverine charged forward, growling. Backpedaling, Naruto dodged numerous slashes. He turned and put his leg behind the older mutant. Snatching Wolverine's arm, he threw Wolverine through the air. As a display of strength, Wolverine landed on his feet after flipping in midair. Wolverine grinned and said, Jiu-jitsu? Need a more offensive style to beat me? Naruto gestured to Wolverine's chest and said, Wolverine noticed a seal on his chest when he looked down. Activate. Naruto made a seal of Ram's. Wolverine let out a roar of agony as lightning sped through his body. Wolverine was soon on his knees, panting heavily as the seal burned up. He is improving his seal skills, but that one was too weak, Kushina thought. Wolverine rushed forward faster, saying, "I'll make you pay for that one, brat." Naruto broke through 2 hand seals in a flash. Bunshin no Jutsu. Clone technique. Wolverine was surrounded by 6 pictures of Naruto to attack the person 40 degrees to his right. Wolverine pivoted on his heel when Wolverine's claws sliced through the air. Naruto flipped backwards. "I can smell the real you," Wolverine snarled. "That won't work on me." With a sheepish smile, Naruto said, "I forgot about that." He turned his back to Wolverine's chest and swiftly grabbed Wolverine's wrist. Naruto flipped Wolverine over his back and onto the ground, back first, in a single motion as an axe kick descended from above. Wolverine moaned and rolled aside. Naruto's foot landed on the ground. The Cerebro. Upon hearing the alarm, Professor Xavier was alerted to the appearance of a new mutant signature as soon as he put on Cerebro. A picture of the girl appeared. Anne Marie, a Mississippi orphan from Caldecott County. His eyes took on a bewildered expression as he was unable to accurately read her mutation. She appeared to have a second thought, which is keeping him from getting a real lock on her whereabouts. Wearing her ninja outfit, Kushina walked into the room. She looked at the girl's picture on the screen. The question wasn't, "New mutant?" Yes, however, her mind is erratic. "I believe she has manifested a strange power that could make her a danger to others as well herself," replied Xavier. "It is a weekend, so I will assemble the team." Looking at her with interest, Charles said, "I don't think that's a good idea. I mean, how you would feel if a bunch of people appeared out of nowhere and suddenly approached, especially when a strange ability suddenly manifests," Kushina replied. Charles's hands were folded. "I see your point. What do you suggest?" At his glance, Kushina waved her hand and said, "Let Naruto handle it. I know, it sounds ridiculous, but he needs this. He claims to want to help mutants, and to do that he needs to develop skills like this where he can approach complete strangers in a way that puts them at ease. Face it, there is not much else that he can be taught. His fighting abilities have surpassed mine, and fighting Wolverine on a daily basis is not going to keep him busy for long." Aurora walked into the room. She approached next to Kushina and said, "I agree, he is still a bit rough around the edges, but to be a proper leader he needs to be more personal. Scott would make a great leader if only he still didn't view his powers as a curse. Naruto fully accepts his abilities and can teach others to do the same." Charles thought about the situation. He was aware that Naruto aspired to be able to reconcile mutants and non-mutants in the future. It would take more than one's fists to accomplish such a feat. It required a strong will and a strong mind. The professor's face broke into a smile. "Very well, Aurora, Kushina, I will take you both." Kushina gave a contemptuous wave. It hurt her to say it, but it is the truth. "Nope, I got a training session with the kids. Besides, it is better if he does this without me." Naruto had to develop his independence. "Aurora?" Charles asked. Aurora said, "Of course I will go get Naruto," and walked out of the room. Room of danger. Nightcrawler's expression was one of disappointment. How come Naruto gets to go on a solo mission? "I am wondering that myself," Scott remarked. Jean grinned. "It will be good for him. Maybe he will learn to take things a bit more seriously. The professor knows what he is doing." Shadowcat moved out of Nightcrawler's way. She was still a little uneasy about the blur's tail and fur. The 4 turned around when they heard doors opening and asked, Why were we called down here?" Kushina entered the danger room on foot. Her stern expression caused the 4 gulps to become uneasy. That was the only time Scott and Jean had ever seen that look. They were still afraid of it. Kushina passed them and came to a halt a few feet away. She turned back to the 4 children. "Today is a special day. First, I have a test for the 4 of you. It is a simple test that won't require much. I won't even activate the danger room for it." Nightcrawler grinned and said, "Okay, I like the sound of this test." "I'm glad." Kushina grinned. 3 bells came out of her pouch as she reached inside. As she fastened the bells to her waist, the student's eyes took on a bewildered expression. "The test is simple. All you have to do is get a bell." Jean's forehead furrowed. "There are only 3 bells." Kushina grinned. "Guess that means no matter what happens one of you will fail. If you manage to pass the test, then I will grant you a week off from danger room training." Kurt and Scott gave each other high fives. "But if you can't get a bell, then we do danger room training double time with Wolverine as your instructor." Kitty let out a moan. "I am regretting coming here." "We can do this," Scott declared with assurance. Kushina took out a timer and set it for 2 hours, asking, "Think so? I'll give you 2 hours to accomplish this test. When it goes off, the test is over. No second chances." "Let's do this." Nightcrawler emerged beside Kushina via teleportation as Kushina whirled around Nightcrawler and kicked him, sending him sprawling forward. He reached out to grab air. Kushina grinned. "I didn't even say begin." Nightcrawler let out a moan. Begin. The Mississippi. The seat was occupied by Naruto. The pilots of the jet were Storm and Professor X's eyes were filled with nervousness as he sat. He would be going on a mission to meet another mutant for the first time. Naruto. A new mutant has appeared. Her powers are danger to herself and the others, stated Xavier. Naruto smiled. All right, I was getting bored around here, I'll go get the others. Xavier's gaze was severe. Naruto's eyes widened in surprise as he said, No, I have decided that you will go alone. I remember you once saying that you desired to create peace between mutants and the rest of the world so that we no longer had to hide away. To do that you will first need to learn how to relate to those mutants who didn't grow up as privileged as you. I don't understand, a bewildered Naruto said. This girl has suddenly gained a miraculous gift, a gift that she views as a curse because it has now made her an outcast. She has no home to go to. All she feels is fear and a desire to find a place to escape, stated Xavier. She needs a friend to show her that her powers aren't a curse, that her powers are wonderful and that there are others like her who understands what she is going through. He averted his gaze with a guilty expression. He had been talking about wanting to figure out how to let mutants live openly without hiding all this time. Rather, he comes to the realization that he has no idea how any of the mutants feel. Kurt, Scott, Jean, and Kitty all came from households that didn't believe in their abilities. Friends and family are afraid of their abilities. Jean had grown somewhat distant from her own parents, but Kurt and Kitty's parents eventually came to terms with it. Scott was not allowed to take off his shades in public for fear of causing damage. Naruto never gave it much thought. His mother was there for him no matter what. His skills had always been supported by her. People around him had accepted him as a child. Storm gave Naruto another look. She wanted to comfort him by saying something. This somber and anxious Naruto just didn't feel right. Naruto never stops grinning and laughing at her. Professor Xavier shook his head. He must handle this alone. Take a break. A house was struck by a rogue, she asked, looking around. Dad? The house is deserted. Running upstairs. She headed for the left-hand room. She rushed into the room with a smile on her face. It was an ordinary room filled with pictures of a boy and a number of trophies. Rogue grabbed the photo and asked, Is that me? She sat down on the bed with a perplexed expression in her eyes. Memories began to flood her mind, and she clutched her head. Abruptly, the room's door was kicked down. Fear filled Rogue's eyes as he saw a man in a black and orange latex suit with a fierce snarl. He turned to face her. Wolverine let out his claws and roared, I found you, girl. The Wolverine always gets his prey. He sprang at Rogue. Wolverine destroyed the bed while Rogue ran around him. With a shudder of terror, Rogue asked, Who are you? What do you want? I am a member of the X-Men, and I will destroy you. Wolverine hurled at Rogue. Rogue whirled around and fled the room. Wolverine howled as he followed her to the stairs and then came to a halt. He grinned as he started to transform into a gorgeous woman with blue skin. Mystique chuckled. One more turn of the wheel and you'll belong to me. I won't let you fall into the hands of Xavier. She transformed into Storm. Xavier Institute. The danger chamber. Kushina was hit by an optic beam fired by Cyclops. After avoiding it with ease, Kushina spun around and threw a dulled shuriken at Jean. Jean jumped out of the way just as she was about to use her telekinetic abilities to get a ball behind Kushina. Nightcrawler teleported. Nightcrawler was seized by Kushina, who threw him into Kitty. The two fell to the floor. Like, get off me. Kitty moaned. Nightcrawler rubbed his head and said, Sorry, how does she always know where I am going? Kushina knocked Cyclops onto his ass with a leg sweep. She threw more shuriken at Jean, making her dodge and lose concentration once more. Before Jean could react, Kushina materialized in front of her and thrust her chest with her palm. Ah! Jean slammed into the floor. The air rang with a sound. Aw man, moaned Nightcrawler. I don't understand, how were you able to beat all of us? Replied Cyclops. Kushina gave Cyclops a stern look as she emerged in front of him. Oh, I suppose you thought that because I don't have any special powers aside from my physical abilities that you should have beat me. How very arrogant, she said. He flew backwards into the wall after taking a kick to the chest. Cyclops let out a painful groan. Jean's gaze expanded. Cyclops, she exclaimed as she rushed to join him. Kushina? Kushina did not waver. None of you managed to realize the true meaning behind this test. Nightcrawler cocked his head, perplexed. True meaning? I'm lost. Shadowcat scowled and said, Yeah, like wasn't the point to get a bell? The young mutants were perplexed. The true meaning behind this test is teamwork. She indicated each one with a finger. Though you have special powers, you are not all powerful, nor are you automatically going to be stronger than those without special abilities. I have proved that today, showing each of you how weak you truly are. However, though you are weak individually, together you make a strong team that can overcome any obstacle. Had you worked together, you might have managed to get a bell. Jean's gaze expanded. You purposely left out a fourth bell so that it would cause us to individually get a bell for ourselves. Kushina gave a nod. That's right, in a real fight, There are going to be times when you are going to face an obstacle that is going to test your character. You have a choice: look out for your own desires or choose to stick with your friends to the end. Shadowcat remarked, "Man, that is like deep, it is making my head hurt." In embarrassment, Cyclops hung his head. All he had been thinking about had been himself. Additionally, he had previously witnessed Kushina's skills. He had conceitedly believed that he had sufficiently perfected his abilities to surpass her physical limitations. Two excellent examples of mutants with limited abilities who have trained endlessly to overcome any challenge are Kushina and Wolverine. "I failed. I guess I am not ready to be a leader of the X-Men," Cyclops replied. Jean said, "Scott, we all failed." Kushina grinned and said, "It's not a failure if you learned a lesson. Next time you'll be ready, right?" Cyclops nodded resolutely. The Mississippi Naruto searched for the rogue mutant by going from roof to roof, running through the suburb neighborhood at Chunin level speeds. He made no noise and left no sign of his presence. He turned his head to the east when he heard a scream followed by a flash of lightning as he leapt high into the air from a fence. A stern expression came to his eyes. He looked around, looking for any indications of movement. He looked at a girl running wildly. The girl is really attractive. She had a nice body, short brown hair with one white strand, and pale white kin. He arched an eyebrow because the green of her shirt and stockings gave the impression that she liked the color after landing on a tree. Naruto leapt again with the intention of landing directly beside her. A flash of lightning appeared above Rogue's head, and she screamed. She is currently being pursued by a crazy white-haired woman. What's happening? None of this was what she wanted to happen. Panting, she dashed into a backyard. A little respite from the running. A person fell out of the sky as Rogue approached the bench. He was a good-looking boy who appeared to be about her age, adorable, but a little too short. As she ran, Rogue asked, "Where did you come from?" He pointed up and said, "I came from above." Rogue hesitated. Was that meant to be humorous? A boy let out a moan. "Man, that was not my best material. Oh well, I probably already ruined my funny guy image, so I'll introduce myself. The name is Naruto Namikaze. Nice to meet you," laughed Naruto. For some reason, Rogue felt at ease, though she wasn't sure why. After calming down a little, she made the decision to speak with the boy. "Rogue." Naruto smiled. He leapt high in the air and spun around, landing behind an astonished Rogue, saying, "Rogue? I like it. I am not going to lie, the reason I have come here is because I am a mutant like you." Rogue squinted her eyes. She was getting ready to run. "Mutant?" Naruto approached the bench and sat down, saying, "Yep. Mutants are those who have a special gene in them that gives them superhuman powers. It is a gift that we have blessed with." "Yeah, some gift," Rogue said coldly. Naruto's face broke into a tiny smile. She gave him a questioning look and said, "I guess I don't really understand how you feel. My mother is a mutant, or at least not what one would consider normal. In any case, I was encouraged to train my powers from the day I was born, and I loved it. I can't really imagine my life without them. I even met others who are mutants and we are all good friends," Naruto said, scratching the back of his head, "and it would be wonderful if we could become friends." "Why should I trust you?" Rogue asked, crossing her arms over her chest. "You shouldn't," Naruto said with a sorrowful smile. "You're not familiar with me. I have no idea what it's like to be evasively afraid of my skills. I mean, your abilities just appeared out of nowhere, and now you're on the run without any friends or family. I have no idea what that must be like." He leapt to his feet and grinned amiably, saying, "I understand what it's like to have to hide from people. I wish I could openly use my powers. Man, I can't, though, because people will be afraid of me and may even despise me because of my abilities. Having to hide constantly is awful." "Sounds like being a mutant is a curse." Rogue's eyes took on a sorrowful expression. "No. Our abilities are a part of who we are," Naruto said, his eyes hardening. "Without them, I wouldn't be the person I am today. Who cares if I cause trouble for other people? I'm going to get past it and accept my skills. I will eventually be able to go about my daily life knowing that I am a mutant. They are able to laugh, spit, glare, and mock me. I will always be the same person I am." As he extended his hand, Naruto said, "I can't give you a cure." Naruto grinned warmly and said, "I can offer you a place where you won't be able to hide or need to fear being who you are." Rogue had never seen eyes like those before, and she felt safe and unconcerned about the outside world. "Good job, Naruto." Rogue and Naruto turned around to see a familiar woman. She stared at the extended hand, and then she stared into his warm eyes. Her own hands slowly started to rise. "That's her." Rogue gasped. "A Storm?" "Incredulous," Naruto said. "I see you managed to catch her," said Storm with a sly smile. "I had faith in your abilities." Rogue's eyes were betrayed as she gazed at Naruto. "What, do you know her?" "You're not Storm," Naruto angrily said, causing Storm to lie on the ground unconscious. As he turned to face Rogue, Naruto narrowed his eyes and rushed forward, causing her eyes to fill with surprise and pain as a right hook caught her across the face. "How was she aware of you?" demanded that Rogue leave Naruto alone. Naruto calmly stepped forward and said, "Rogue, I didn't come here to harm you in any way, come on. If I wanted to harm you, I could have done it by now. Everything I said is true. I swear, and I always keep my word." She hesitated because he seemed so genuine, and she wanted to trust him. She looked down at the ground and then back up at him. Naruto stood there motionless, his arms raised in surrender. "Okay." Rogue nodded, and Naruto's face broke into a big smile. Jet, it appeared that Kushina had been correct all along. He needed to do this to understand what it meant to genuinely connect with people. Professor Xavier grinned as he watched Naruto stroll alongside Rogue, who laughed as he related to her one of his school pranks. "Old man." Naruto gestured. "Hi." Naruto. Xavier grinned and said, "Hello, Rogue, my name is Professor Charles Xavier." "Avoid being frightened," Naruto remarked. "The old man can read minds." "Hi." Rogue nodded. Rogue tensed as Storm emerged from the Jet, but Naruto calmed her by placing a hand on her shoulder. "That is the real Storm," Naruto said, with a bewildered expression on both Xavier's and Storm's faces. "There was this fake Storm that was trying to hurt Rogue. Even acted as though they knew me. I knocked her unconscious, but she vanished as soon as I looked away." "I see," Xavier said. "Mystique must have been the one. She can shapeshift into any form she wants because she is a mutant. Rogue must have been frightened of us because Mystique was attempting to persuade her to join her." Storm held out her hand and said, "I assure you that I mean you no harm." Rogue said, "Thanks," and shook Storm's hand, grinning. Professor Xavier said, "Let's return to the institute. You can meet the others through Naruto." Looking up at the Jet, Rogue said, "Y'all must be loaded." She had never seen anything like that before. "Wait until you see the mansion," Naruto said with a smile. "It will astound you." Take a break. One thing that kept her sane in this insane institute was the tickling sensation by her ear, which she scratched and then returned, causing an irritated expression to appear in her eyes as she swatted at it once more. Kitty hummed a tune while she sat on the couch typing on her laptop and grinning while writing in her diary. Naruto was standing behind her with a blade of grass. When Kitty turned to see him laughing, he sat down on the couch beside her and said, "Really, can't you take a day off from joking?" Kitty sighed. Naruto smiled, "Nope," and Kitty blushed a little. He looks so good when he smiles like that. "What are you doing?" "I'm just writing in my journal right now. I can clear my mind thanks to it. If not, I'd blow up," Kitty said. Leaning back, Naruto said, "That's cool." Kitty arched an eyebrow, saying, "Do you think so?" "Yes, everyone must find a way to express themselves to get things off my chest. I usually kick shades or claws asses in the danger room." Naruto winked. The girl's face lit up with a smile as she returned to typing. "Typical boy." Kitty giggled as she playfully nudged him. Naruto laughed and flipped over the couch, waving before leaving Kitty alone with her diary. Bavel High. Fred said, "Where do I go next?" As he left the principal's office, a jock grabbed the child as he passed by and said, "Hey, where do I go?" "To a circus, perhaps?" Duncan grinned. Fred became angry and threw Duncan to the ground. Fred then seized the lockers that were close by and tore them from the wall. "Don't laugh at me." Duncan was about to be smashed by Fred, and his eyes widened in terror. "Hey, maybe I can help you," Jean said, running ahead of Fred and putting himself in between him and Duncan. "Get out of here, Duncan," Jean said, and Duncan immediately ran away. Fred put the locker back and grinned sheepishly as he lowered it, a slight flush warming his face. Okay." Jean gave him a warm smile and said, "Okay, let's see." She looked at his schedule and said, "You have to go to room 201, that's over there." "Thanks." Fred grinned. "No problem." Jean grinned. "I'll see you around." Fred grinned broadly as he watched her leave. "Lunch, wow, is that humongous boy the one you and Logan went to visit?" Naruto asked, glancing over at a large boy who strode into the cafeteria. He had never seen a boy so tall and large that he immediately thought of the word blob, said Kitty. "His name is Fred Dukes," Jean said, nodding. "After the show, we never had the opportunity to talk to him." "Present." Naruto said he had a job at a derby. Jean clarified, they had him on as a sideshow where he impressed the audience with his amazing strength. "Well, he sure likes food," Scott said, as Fred carried a heaped plate of food to an empty table. As soon as Fred sat down, the chair broke under his weight, and he fell to the ground, slamming the plate of food into the air and splattering it all over Duncan and an assortment of other jocks. Duncan's eyes filled with anger. "That's it, you are going to pay for that." Fred tried to get up but slipped and fell. The cafeteria was filled with laughter, and Fred's eyes were filled with rage and anger. "Stop laughing at me." Duncan was struck in the face by a sandwich after Fred snatched up a few pieces of food and threw them. Naruto got to his feet and yelled, "Food fight! Food began flying through the air as an all-out war broke out in the cafeteria. Kitty was hit by mashed potatoes and used her powers to sink out of the cafeteria. Naruto and Kurt threw food at the closest people while laughing together. Kurt hit a couple of cheerleaders, who then screamed as if they were in a horror movie. I am starting to like school. Kurt grinned before being struck in the face by milk. Be merciless. Naruto yelled. Fred snatched up a table and started to swing it. Fred, please stop, Jean begged Fred, who was panting heavily. Please, Fred. They were laughing at me, said Fred, lowering the table. It bothers me when people make fun of me. I know, they had no right to laugh at you, Jean said, nodding. Avoid letting them affect you. Take a break. Quickly putting a table between himself and Rogue, Naruto said, don't be like that, Rogue-chan, grinning charmingly. It was just having fun. It's not fun to hit me with gravy, Rogue said, squinting. Now come on out here and accept your punishment like a man. He had only known Rogue for a week, but she was always quiet and minding her own business. She had a very confrontational personality, but that didn't show because she was a bit of a loner. His best friend, Naruto, had a way of making people act their worst. Scott passed by and stopped to watch the two. Get back here, Blondie! Rogue screamed angrily. There was laughter. Never. Naruto fled after school. As Jean and her friend Terrence were leaving the school, Fred looked at Jean from behind the tree and plucked up the courage to leave. Jean and Terrence exclaimed, Hey Fred! This is my friend Terrence, Jean said, and this is Fred. Yes, whatever. Listen, Jean, would you like to get a drink or something to eat? Fred asked. I have other things to do, so listen up. Is tomorrow okay? Jean said. Fred squinted angrily and said, Is that all you can think of? Terrence nodded and hurried off, saying, Listen, Fred, I have responsibilities. I'll talk to you later, Jean remarked. I just can't go around forgetting them. Fred took hold of Jean's arm and said, You're supposed to be my friend. I want to be your friend, but friends don't hurt each other, Jean said in an attempt to break free. Give me up. No, Jean tried to pull away from the school, but Fred's hold was too tight. I'm warning you, he said, as her hair began to stand up and objects began to fly at him. Fred grinned as the objects struck him. Is that all you're capable of? The blob is me? Fred smirked as he grabbed Jean, causing pain to her wrist, which caused her to lose focus on her abilities. Fred began dragging Jean out of the school, but she was unable to free herself due to his strong hold. Let me go. Jean tried to free herself, but she slipped and fell backwards, hitting her head on the ground. The girl lay on the ground unconscious, and Fred became concerned as he picked her up and carried her away. Unknown place. Wake up, Fred said with a grin. Jean opened her eyes slowly and blinked a few times to regain her senses. She saw a table with a plate, silverware, candles, and a table for two. She tried to get up but was unable to do so, and when she looked down, she saw that a steel pipe was twisted around her body, holding her to the chair. Fred, let me go. Placing a napkin on her lap, Fred grinned and said, This will be the best date you ever had. Please, Fred, let me go. We can act as if this never happened if you let me go, Jean remarked. I want to be your friend, but not if you're going to act in this manner. Why not? I am more powerful than all of you, Fred boasted. That doesn't give you the right to do as you want, Jean replied. Oh, that makes me think. Fred left the room as Jean closed her eyes and focused on calling Professor Xavier. I have a surprise for you, Jean said. The Xavier Institute. Professor Xavier clutched his head in agony as he watched Rogue, Kitty, and Nightcrawler train outside. Kushina was supervising a basic training exercise, shouting encouragement and offering advice when they aired. Are you okay? Kushina inquired. This is Jean, Charles declared. She has been abducted. Eyes narrowing, Kushina said, I'm leaving right now. The warehouse. Fred rummaged through the trash heap and discovered an old record player. It's perfect, he said, grinning as he made his way back to where Jean is restrained. In front of him, an object flew past him, piercing the ground, and Fred's eyes widened with interest as a tag on it began to sizzle. Boom! The explosive tag exploded. Shaking her head, Kushina said, Not very bright. Oh, as he came out of the smoke unscathed, Fred shouted, Do you think a small attack like that will hurt me? The blob is me? Kushina said, Hand over Jean and I'll consider going easy on you. An old lady like you, I'll break you in two, frowned Fred as she moved too quickly for Fred to keep up. Kushina clenched her fists in rage. Fred was kicked in the face, causing him to stagger back. Who are you referring to as old? I am only 30, Kushina said with a scowl. 30? As he walked into the warehouse, Naruto smiled and said, That sure is exaggerating. Kushina gave him a gloomy look and slapped him on the head. On second hand, 30 sounds right. Perhaps 28, he grinned. Naruto and Kushina fled in different directions as Fred screamed angrily and threw a steel beam at them. "I'll crush you both." A table flew at Naruto, who ducked under it. Kushina then appeared behind Fred. Naruto then appeared in front of Fred. Fred swung at both of them, hitting air. Mother and son then appeared next to each other, forming identical ram seals. Activate. The seals that were placed on Fred's back and stomach came to life. Oh! The seals came to an end, and Fred screamed in agony as lightning tore through his body. Fred fell to the ground, unconscious, and there was a loud thud. "Jean! I came to save you, Jean-chan. Your Prince Charming has come for you, my lady," Naruto said as he dashed into the room and saw Jean strapped to a chair. Rolling her eyes, Jean said, "Get me free, is that how you speak to the man who has come to save you?" Naruto asked. Covering his heart with his hand, Kushina pretended to be examining her nails as Jean turned to face her, and Jean let out a sigh. "I'm grateful. Good prince, would you kindly release me from my constraints?" Jean said in a dramatic tone. Obviously, as he walked behind Jean, Naruto pulled out a kunai and directed his chakra through it, encircling it with wind chakra as he swung it downward, cutting through the iron pipe. Jean rubbed her arms and said, "My lady, would you reward me with a kiss?" Jean grinned and bent down to kiss Naruto's cheek. After Kushina covered her mouth with her hand, Naruto gave a cute pout and said, "Come on. Would you mind telling me how you beat everyone else here?" Jean asked, laughing. "Scott will be upset with him." Naruto smiled and said, "I might have not told the others when the old man contacted me." Shades received 0 points, while the ninja received 1. He laughed sheepishly. Cerebro also picked up the mutant signature of Mystique near Pietro's location, and Professor Xavier stared at the image of the newest mutant signature to appear. Pietro Maximoff, who had a hard look in his eyes as he recognized the child, was someone he highly doubted he would be able to persuade to join the institute, not because he thought the child was a lost cause, but because the boy had other people watching him. "Bavel High. The boy is a nuisance," said Principal Darkholm, leaning against the desk. "I offered him, but he declined. He doesn't seem to like you very much." Magneto stepped out of the darkness and said, "Pietro is impulsive and stubborn. He has amazing abilities that I will greatly benefit from. He will join us if given the proper incentive." The principal's face lit up with a smirk. "New York Mall with hundreds of people in the mall," Scott said. "This won't be easy. We are all going to be extra careful not to reveal our abilities," he said, "because even the smallest mistake would reveal the existence of mutants to the world." Kitty's eyes glowed as she said, "I'm going shopping, goodbye." "Wait," went Scott's voice. "Some new clothes would be nice for me." Kushina grinned and said, "Come on Rogue, let's check out the stores." Smirking, Rogue said, "All right." Scott rubbed his temples, wondering if everyone had forgotten that they were supposed to be searching for a new mutant. Naruto and Kurt erupted in laughter, and when Scott looked up, he saw the two waving from the second floor. His eyes were irritated as the two fled, probably for trouble. Jean grinned and said, "Scott, let it go. We are all aware of our purpose." As he caught up to Jean, Scott grinned and said he would show Naruto who had more points with Jean. "Try to have some fun." She left, wanting to visit a few stores. Take a break. Naruto wandered alone through the mall, where Kurt had fled after attempting to make out with a few attractive girls. He looked at the different shops, but what he needed was a good joke store, a place where he could buy materials for his next big prank, because he had a reputation to maintain. He had just located the mutant they were searching for, so he got a hard look when he noticed a fast-moving object. Pietro stood off to the side, grinning, and took the cash out of the 4 wallets he had swiped. Naruto said, "Sorry, but that doesn't belong to you, because it had been too simple to steal candy from a baby." "Who are you, anyway?" Naruto looked surprised and said, "Need to be faster than that to catch me." Pietro moved so quickly that he took the money back before Naruto noticed. "Oh yeah, I have never lost in a constant of speed." Naruto smiled. He shot in Pietro's direction, saying, "I'll show you what it means to be fast." Pietro grinned as he shot off at high speed, becoming a blur as he went, and the people he passed were hit by a powerful wind that nearly knocked them down, though some did fall. Pietro nearly stopped and went outside, saying, "Too slow, loser." An irritated expression came into Naruto's eyes as he ran outside a minute later, searching for Pietro, who had long since vanished. Naruto had never been defeated in a constant of speed, and he had no intention of letting this one go. The Xavier Institute. As she watched Naruto sit in the center of the danger room meditating, Rogue arched an eyebrow. Naruto had been upset the entire way back from New York, and he didn't even react when Kurt and Scott made fun of him for being beaten when they returned. He went straight to the danger room. Kushina approached Rogue's side and said, "Is he still working?" "Yes." "What is causing him to take it so personally?" Rogue scowled. "My son has a fierce competitive spirit. He dislikes losing at everything. He faces an opponent who completely outclassed him in an area that he has always felt comfortable with, Kushina said, adding that losing so badly makes him seriously doubt his skills. It was incomprehensible to Rogue. He is the strongest person I know. He treats Logan like it's nothing when he beats him up. Jean and Scott are barely able to keep up. Naruto-kun has always worked hard, Kushina said with a proud smile. He will recover from this. Oh. Rogue and Kushina cocked their heads as Naruto screamed and leapt to his feet. I detest thinking. It hurts my head. Stop pondering. I'm going to kick his ass the next time I see him. He's back to normal. The two women sighed. Bavel Kurt sat at the lunch table and said, there's a basketball game coming up. It sounds like it will be a good one. Do you want to go? Naruto said thoughtfully. We haven't yet pulled a practical joke on the basketball team. Really? That's correct. We modified the prank and went after the track team instead, Kurt said, snapping his fingers. Then we have no choice, Naruto said, nodding. Every organized team needs to be given the same treatment. We will use Operation Mudslide on the basketball team following the game. Kurt grinned and said, I like it. What is the strategy? Scott and Jean watched as Naruto and Kurt huddled together, which only meant that they were planning another one of their pranks. Although neither of them wanted to admit it, Kurt and Naruto came up with the best pranks, which are always funny and never last forever. They always target a large group of people so that no one can be laughed at or made fun of individually. Jean nodded. If those put as much work as they do into planning pranks into their classes, they would have the highest grades in school. Yeah, I don't see that happening anytime soon, Scott replied. It's true. Will you attend tomorrow's game? Jean remarked. I've heard it's against a team that went to the championship, PMX-01 or something. Just to see what prank the two are planning. I'll go, Scott said. Those two always hit at major events. Jean nodded. A game of basketball. As they sat at the top of the bleachers, Naruto and Kurt bumped fists. The prank had been meticulously planned, and the two were ready to set it off at the end of the game. It would be legendary. The opposing team entered the court and was jeered by the main team. That's him. Naruto got to his feet. Kurt scowled. Who? That is the kid from New York, Naruto said, giving Pietro a stern look. Jean, who was seated across from Naruto, said, don't tell me you are going to start a fight in the middle of the game. Naruto. Scott shook his head. Operation Mudslide is off, Naruto said. Clenching his fists, he cracked his knuckles as he made his way down the bleachers, saying, I have business to attend to. With a smug grin, Pietro entered the court and waved to a couple of attractive girls. They blushed and smiled back at him. Too easy. A shove from behind nearly knocked him off his feet. Watch it, loser, Pietro scowled. The boy muttered, my bad, with his head lowered and a smirk on his face as he passed Pietro. Pietro scowled and turned around, at which point his shorts fell down. The air was filled with laughter, and Pietro quickly grabbed his shorts and pulled them up. Looks like we are even? Pietro turned to glare at the person who had bumped into him, and his eyes were filled with surprise. The name is Naruto, by the way. Remember it, grinned Naruto. I should have known a loser like you would be at this loser school, laughed Pietro. With a broad smile, Naruto said, I'll show you a loser. That's it. Pietro grabbed a sign that read, I like to wear panties, and pulled it off his back. His eyes were filled with anger as he looked up to see Naruto wave at him from the hallway. Take a break. As a blur tore across the parking lot, Naruto leapt out of the way and landed on top of a car as the blur stopped. Pietro was dressed in a light green and silver suit. Naruto grinned as he tore off his clothes and stood in his ninja gear, saying, I'm going to make you pay for making me look bad. Naruto had no time to dodge as a swift right hook caught him across the jaw and sent him flying across the ground. Pietro bounded forward at unbelievable speeds, so fast that the winds created blue cars into the air and smashed them down on the ground. How was that to you? Pietro grinned. Naruto smiled and leapt to his feet, saying, Kitty hits harder than you. All speed and no power. Bunshin no Jutsu, clone technique. Pietro squinted, and 3 Naruto materialized, forming a hand seal as Pietro bounded towards him. Huh? Naruto chuckled and asked, what's wrong? Uncertain about which of us is the real one? Naruto made fun of Pietro. Oh. Pietro ran at supersonic speeds going through each clone. He came to a stop after destroying all the clones. A confused look appeared in his eyes. Where did he go? Below. Naruto pulled Pietro straight into the ground as he exploded out of it unharmed. Doden. Shinju Zanshu no Jutsu, Earth Release. Double Suicide Decapitation Technique. Pietro's eyes widened in surprise as a pair of hands suddenly emerged from the ground and grabbed him by the ankles. Give me a break. Pietro, who was buried up to his neck, screamed. I tried to break free, but the earth held firm. Not so fast anymore, huh? Smiled Naruto. Too simple. Pietro gave Naruto a vile glare as sirens sounded throughout the room. Naruto waved and vanished in a whirlpool of leaves. The Xavier Institute Aurora looked up from watering the flowers on the front porch and put her hand to her mouth when she saw Jean and Scott, both of them completely covered in mud. Naruto and Kurt were laughing heartily as they ran into the institute. "I hate them," Scott declared. Then Jean complained, "So do I." Take a break. It was like watching a deadly dance as Wolverine leaned back against the wall of the danger room and watched peacefully as Naruto and Kushina sparred. Naruto had the strength, speed, and youth to draw from, allowing him to keep up with his mother, while Kushina had the experience of innumerable battles that allowed her to keep up with Naruto. One thing that Kushina and Wolverine shared in common is being beat by Naruto. The two were fiercely competitive and hated losing to an opponent. Unfortunately, Naruto is a fighting machine. Naruto had been trained since birth in the martial arts, ninjutsu, stealth, and espionage. A normal kid probably wouldn't have grown so fast in such a short amount of time. Naruto is anything but normal. Kushina and Naruto had more evolved body structures than the average human. Muscles mass is greater, allowing for greater strength and speed. Reflexes are faster, eyes are sharper, and bones are denser, allowing them to take heavier blows. Generations of ninja blood flowed through each of their veins. Where they come from, it isn't considered a mutation, it is the norm. Wolverine had trained his body over the many to its peak. Kushina had commented that Wolverine had Chunin level speed and Cage level abilities in hand-to-hand combat. Those hand-to-hand combat skills mean nothing if you can't hit what you are aiming at. Naruto and Kushina had Chunin level speed and reflexes, allowing them to fight on equal grounds with Wolverine in hand-to-hand combat. "If you had been born a ninja, you would probably be able to take us both on without any problems," acknowledged Kushina. Kushina pinned Naruto in a barrier seal from which he could not break free, which only made Wolverine even more enraged. "That is how you win," Kushina grinned. Naruto complained, "It's unfair. I have no idea how to perform such sophisticated seals." "What a lousy child. Go take a shower. It's my turn," Wolverine grinned. "Not at all. I won." Wolverine and Kushina squatted into their positions as Naruto smiled and Kushina turned off the barrier. Naruto leapt aside to observe the battle from a safe distance. "Take a break, Wolverine," Sabretooth growled as he strode forward, crashing through the gates guarding the water tower, climbing the ladder, and leaping to the top, where he had a perfect view of Bavel from inside. "Bavel, hi," Naruto moaned when he got his report back, which read, "I am so dead, his mother was going to kick him in the ass, and nothing could save him from this." The bell rang to signal the end of class, and he packed the paper into his backpack before leaving the room. "I am so dead," he sighed as he approached the window. "Naruto," Kurt said, while teleporting onto the precipice. "Yes, what's going on?" As Kurt turned blue and furred with a tail, Naruto asked, not needing an answer. "My image inducer is on the fritz," Kurt said, lifting his wrist to reveal it before anyone notices. "I must return to the mansion. Our shop class will be missed as a result." With a nod, Naruto said, "I'll have Christy copy her notes for you." "Thank you, I'm out." Kurt teleported off in a cloud of smoke. With a smirk on his face as Kurt teleported away, Sabretooth watched through binoculars as Naruto and Kurt conversed before the mutant leapt from the top of the water tower, ready to pursue his target. "Take a break looking at the paper," Jean said. "Why didn't you ask me for assistance?" "It's not a huge concern, just a dumb paper," Naruto muttered. "It's not just a paper." As he gazed up at the clouds, Jean sighed and said, "This is your education. This is nothing new." Naruto had different priorities than everyone else. Most people used school to improve themselves, and he only came because he had promised his mother that he would complete high school, even though Jean knew he had no intention of attending college. She partially attributed that to his mother. Kushina had brought Naruto up to be a true-blooded warrior, teaching him how to fight from the time he could walk. Kushina wanted Naruto to carry on his father's legacy, and it was only thanks to Professor Xavier's influence that he was able to enroll him in Jean and Scott's school. "Mom will get it," Naruto said. Tossing the paper into his bag, he waited for the light to change in the corner, saying, "I am not as smart as you or the others." "Naruto, I'm not, even though I know you'll say I am. I get headaches from books. All I see are a bunch of words that don't make any sense." Naruto and Jean started to cross the street. "I'm going to give my entire life to helping people after I graduate. Like those we see on the news. I will become a hero right now. I wouldn't kill to be Spider-Man." He probably doesn't give school any thought. When Naruto heard a growl, he grabbed Jean and threw her aside before striking him hard in the side. Sabretooth then grabbed Naruto and threw him against the building wall. Naruto screamed in agony while gripping his left arm, which was bent at an odd angle. "Naruto!" Jean shouted. With a sly smile, Sabretooth said, Tell me where Wolverine is and maybe I'll only hurt you a bit. A kunai pierced Sabretooth's leg as it flew through the air. Slowly, Naruto rose to his feet and said, touch her, and I'll show you the true meaning of pain. That one will cost you. Die. A psychic force slammed into Sabretooth, sending him into the side of a parked car. Naruto grabbed Jean and ran into an alley, tossing her over his shoulder as he ran up the side of the building. He landed on the roof with a leap, gently lowering Jean to her feet. We have to get you back to the institute, said Jean. Sabretooth tore out the kunai while the wound was already starting to heal. After Naruto turned around and said, first we deal with him, Sabretooth leapt over the ledge and landed in front of the two. No escape. Sabretooth grinned. Naruto smiled and said, escape? I simply did not want other people to become involved. I can now stop worrying about someone rescuing you from the ass kick I'm about to deliver. A shadow descended from above, and an axe kick struck Sabretooth in the face, causing his face to crash into the roof. Naruto jumped backwards, creating some distance, and Sabretooth jumped forward, tackling Naruto to the ground and his eyes filling with surprise as he turned into a log with a roar. Sabretooth charged more cautiously in Naruto's direction. Damn, he is almost as heavy as claws, said Naruto after focusing her powers and causing a psychic blast to knock Sabretooth backwards. Naruto then appeared behind Sabretooth, grabbing him by the coat, flipping him over so that his head and face were face first on the roof. I can't hold him long, Jean gritted her teeth, and Naruto spun around his heel, delivering a spinning right heel kick across Sabretooth's face. Jean let go, allowing Sabretooth to fly backwards into the ledge. Naruto was shocked when Sabretooth recovered quickly and leapt at him. Acknowledge it, we are unbeatable. Naruto smiled and said, together, we are unbeatable. Jean's cheek blushed slightly at the compliment. Jean is even stronger than me. Sabretooth snarled, you're really starting to piss me off. Jean said with a smile, it is done. While running up here, I gave Jean an ink brush that I use for drawing seals. Bite me. Naruto winked at Sabretooth, whose eyes grew angry. He then knelt down and pressed his hand down on the roof as Sabretooth charged forward, waiting until he stepped into the proper spot before saying, activate. Black lines began to form on Sabretooth's body as he abruptly stopped, and a seal appeared on the center of the roof with Sabretooth standing in the center. I sent her mental pictures of the seal to illustrate the reason for our argument on the roof. She drew the seal with the brush using her psychic abilities, giving the impression that she was supporting me from the background. A pair of teenagers had defeated the self-proclaimed greatest hunter, and his eyes were filled with hatred. He had killed countless people. Mutants and humans had fallen at his hands, and Naruto formed a single-handed seal. Secondary seal activate. Lightning sparked at the edge and then converged on Sabretooth, who let out a silent scream as he was electrocuted. Naruto continued to hold the seal until Sabretooth passed out. Jean hurried to check the mutant's pulse and said, he's fine, most likely won't be awakening anytime soon. Yes, if he did, I'd be shocked, Naruto said, gripping his arm. I got in touch with the professor. Naruto walked over to Sabretooth and threw the overgrown mutant over his good arm. Jean used her powers to fly back down, and Naruto jumped down from window ledge to window ledge. They're coming to pick us up in the van, Jean said. The Xavier Institute. You're so lucky that you got hurt or I would be yelling about the bad grade you made, Kushina said, slapping Naruto upside the head. Naruto winced as he nursed the back of his head. His left arm was in a cast, and it hurt to have a broken arm. He had been told not to do anything in the danger room until his arm healed. Maybe getting a broken isn't so bad after all, Naruto said with a smile. Brat, Naruto chuckled, and Kushina rolled her eyes. Are you certain you don't want to go to school? I don't want you to feel pressured to follow in my or your father's footsteps, she said, biting her lower lip. Whatever you choose to do, I will always love you, just make sure you don't regret anything. Naruto grinned and said, it's not like I'm going to be a ninja. I'm not going down the same path as you or your dad. I've already made the decision to live my life as a hero. For me, school is not important. I'll let Jean and the others who are skilled at it use their education to change things. I'm going to use my influence and actions to change things. Kushina leaned her head against Naruto's and smiled proudly, saying, I support you 100%. Naruto smiled broadly. Maximum security facility in Stokes County. Mystique walked through the facility with ease, a smirk on her face as she passed the last security and entered a circular chamber with a large metallic device in the center. Her eyes fell on a console, and she pressed a number of buttons, causing the ground in the center of the room to rise. Those idiots truly believed that such a pitiful prison would be able to keep out intruders. Now, Mystique grinned with pleasure as she gazed at a huge cryostat tube full of green liquid, her eyes fixed on the giant inside, a man 8 or 9 feet tall with a body that would have made bodybuilders blush, arms nearly as big as hers, hands that could crush her with ease, short brown hair, and a brown body armor suit. Wake up, Kane. Mystique approached the tube while the man's eyes were still somewhat dazed, and after a button was pressed, the green liquid began to drain out. It is time you have a long overdue family reunion with your brother Charles Xavier. Kane's eyes widened, then narrowed. Ironboot Survival Camp Sergeant Ironboot is who I am. You won't soon forget the name of this camp. Ironboot. Ironboot yelled. You won't be playing hide and seek, tag, or throwing water balloons with just a rope and your bravery. You will be running 20 miles across perilous waters. Are you getting me? Yes, sir. Now this young man Scott Summers has earned the rank of group leader through scholastic achievement, Ironboot said as he walked in front of Scott. You'll be doing as he says. Take 10 minutes to gather at the training grounds and unpack your belongings. Rejected. Like I am so going to die out here, Kitty moaned as the students moaned. Anyone let him know that I'm a city boy, man? Evans moaned. Hey, we have a choice thanks to the professor. Training with Logan or here for survival, Jean said. Yes, there is some choice. Does anyone know how to hotwire a bus? I'm a wall. Rogue gathered her belongings. Scott moved ahead of her and said, calm down together, we are capable of overcoming this. The others moaned and grudgingly followed Scott, saying, come on now. Stokes Maximum Security Establishment. Wow. Fluid for cellular paralysis. The glass that encircled Kane came down, and Mystique approached him, beginning to unfasten the cuffs that bound his arms and legs. It will take a while before you are able to move, she said, impressed. It actually stopped the unstoppable. I'll smuggle you out of this facility when you're ready to exact your revenge. Kane let out a moan and turned to face the odd blue woman. Who are you? With a sly grin that was downright cunning, Mystique approached a panel on the wall and took out a brown helmet, saying, a dealmaker. She approached Kane and placed the helmet on his head, making sure it was locked in place before taking a step back. I'll tell you where you can find Charles Xavier, and you help me get my hands on a mutant detection system known as Cerebro. What about my brother? Kane inquired. Mystique let out a gloomy chuckle. Do whatever you want with him. She turned around and said, come, I have a plane waiting. A shove from behind sent her face down on the ground. You are, after all, the unstoppable Juggernaut. The Juggernaut is never taken anywhere. Alarms began to sound as Juggernaut punched a hole in the wall and said, and nothing gets in my way. Charming. Mystique frowned. All muscle, no brain. The Xavier Institute. 5 days after breaking his arm, Naruto was unable to do anything. The password to the danger room had been changed. He was not permitted to go to Camp Ironboot with the others, and he was left alone in the mansion with nothing to do, so he wandered aimlessly around it. After removing the helmet and setting it on the console, Xavier sat with Cerebro on his head and said, you called? Want to pick up some new mutants? Grunted Logan. No, it seems that the children are being quite active at Camp Ironboot, laughed Xavier. Did you advise them against using their abilities? I was hoping they would make that decision on their own. New mutant found, a robotic, female-sounding voice said as a beep prompted them to glance at the screen. It seems a new mutant has popped up, Xavier said. Mutant signature enhanced. Xavier's eyes widened in horror as a picture of a man he knew well appeared on the screen. Signature matches archives. Kane Marco, Stokes County Maximum Security Facility Residence. Present address, upstate New York, in transit. No, Xavier exclaimed. Who is it? Logan leaned forward. My brother-in-law. But how did he manage to get away? An enhanced mutant signature. What is it? Logan scowled. My brother had an X gene, but it was dormant, Xavier said with a somber expression. Thus, he used mysticism to activate it. What abilities does he possess? With a serious tone, Logan asked. He's grown into a titan. Xavier mentally contacted Aurora, asking her to remove the X-Jet and figure out a way to conceal Kane from view so that no one would be stupid enough to attempt to stop him. Invulnerable to all attacks. Logan gave him a stern look. Is there anything you can do to protect yourself from him? My thoughts. If he isn't wearing his helmet, I can disable him with enough psychic blasts, Xavier scowled. The danger room will be the safest place. I'll set everything up, Logan said. It will slow him down, but won't stop him, Xavier stated with intent. En route to Bayville. After setting the autopilot, Storm climbed onto the platform and fastened her seatbelt. The platform rose, allowing her to stand atop the X-Jet, and her eyes glowed white as a thick fog rolled in, concealing the Juggernaut as he moved through it with just one goal in mind. Charles Xavier. The Xavier Institute. Mystique was waiting outside the institute when she noticed the Juggernaut. She grinned and said, I see you have finally arrived. The idiot could have arrived hours ago if he had taken the plane she had arranged, but he didn't even acknowledge her when he punched through the front gate with his fist. Remember our deal? I have Cerebro, Mystique declared. Wolverine bounded out of the front doors, claws out, as Juggernaut approached the mansion. You're not going anywhere, bub. The Juggernaut is me. Nobody can stop me, the Juggernaut shouted. The two women ran at each other after Kushina landed in front of Mystique and said, I think I can take care of you real quick before giving Wolverine a hand. Mystique narrowed her eyes. When a kunai landed in front of the mutant, a sizzling sound filled the air, and it soon exploded. Naruto stood on the mansion's roof, twirling a kunai with his good hand, and Juggernaut emerged from the smoke unscathed. Wolverine attempted to cut the Juggernaut to pieces, but the mutant's body is too strong. Shuriken rained down on Juggernaut, bouncing harmlessly off his body as he walked over to a tree and easily tore it out of its roots. Naruto leapt off the roof as the tree struck where he had been standing. Wolverine charged forward, but a backhand sent him flying away. Juggernaut charged at Naruto, saying, the Juggernaut is unstoppable. Naruto took a straight blow and transformed into a charred log in a cloud of smoke. This guy is tough, Naruto said. When Mystique came out of the cartwheel with a spin kick, Kushina raised her arm to block the kick, grabbed Mystique's leg, and spun her around before throwing her at a tree. Mystique twisted around, landing feet first on the side of the tree, then jumped at Kushina. The kick struck air, sending Mystique hard to the ground, while a heel soon buried itself in Mystique's gut, and blood sprayed out of Mystique's mouth. Kushina grinned. I'll murder you. Mystique whirled around and kicked Kushina in the chest, causing him to stagger back. Mystique then attempted a high heel kick, but Kushina broke through Mystique's defenses and struck Mystique in the face with an elbow, followed by a spin kick that struck Mystique in the jaw, causing Mystique to fall to the ground unconscious. Bitch, Kushina grinned as she heard another explosion. A second explosion filled the Institute grounds as Naruto slapped an explosive tag on Juggernaut's helmet. Juggernaut exploded through the smoke, his fist raised, and it hit the ground as Naruto leapt over him, landing behind him. Has anything hurt this guy? Naruto gasped. Spitting blood, Wolverine said, we need to get his helmet off. Naruto ran forward and said, I got the distraction, you get the helmet. He reared back his right hand and delivered 5 lightning-fast punches, but Juggernaut remained motionless. Naruto gritted his teeth about breaking his hand, but Juggernaut interlaced his fingers before lifting his arms above his head and saying, I'll crush you. Wolverine leapt onto Juggernaut's back, unlatching 2 clamps before being flung off as the giant fist slammed down on Naruto, causing a tiny earthquake as the ground exploded. Thanks, Naruto smiled after throwing a pair of kunai that pierced the ground in front of the Juggernaut. Kushina shook her head and said, I'll kill you myself later, let's take care of him first. The tags exploded, sending a bright flash that blinded the Juggernaut. Naruto was able to unlock a latch before a backhand sent him flying into the ground, and Kushina removed the 4th and final latch. Wolverine. As the giant reached for her, she flipped backwards. Wolverine lunged ahead. Oh! He leapt to his feet, bringing his claws back, and when they hit the helmet, they knocked it off the Juggernaut's head. Wolverine was grabbed by Juggernaut, who then slammed him to the ground. I am the unstoppable Juggernaut. A foot slammed down upon Wolverine's chest. Wolverine's mouth opened up and blood sprayed out. Juggernaut went to stomp Wolverine a second time, but suddenly started to scream, clutching his head in pain. Naruto and Kushina looked to see Professor Xavier on the steps to the Institute. No! Yelled Juggernaut. After a minute of Xavier's mental assault, the Juggernaut collapsed to the ground, unconscious. I'm sorry, Kane, he said. I'm tired, Naruto said, settling on his butt, but that was a lot of fun, man. I'm so happy I stayed instead of going to camp. Naruto burst out laughing. Kushina chuckled and said, I agree, he would never understand those two. Professor Xavier shook his head, and it appeared that he would not need Storm to bring the others after all. Sitting opposite each other were Naruto and Master Akisame. They were both deeply meditating, or so it appeared. There was a faint snore in the air when Master Akisame opened his eyes. He saw Naruto soundly asleep with his head lowered. Master Akisame's eyes took on an irritated appearance. The air was filled with a cracking sound. Ow! Naruto roused and rubbed his head to wakefulness. After saying, this is not a sleeping exercise, Master Akisame set the bamboo stick aside. Ah, come on, the past few months all you have been having me do is meditate and practice moves I already know, murmured Naruto. Don't you have anything else for me to do? Master Akisame took a sip of green tea calmly. I have taught you most of what I know. The more dangerous techniques you are not ready to learn until you have achieved some level of control. Naruto smiled. Every time he spars with his sensei, he suppresses his actual speed and strength, saying, I am all about control. He was extremely enraged because it meant he had never defeated Master Akisame in a spar. I am talking about an inner balance in battle. You are a wildfire that cannot be contained. I want you to learn how to contain those raging flames into a sharp blade, said Master Akisame. Until you do so, most of your time will be spent meditating and reviewing what you have already learned. Naruto emitted a moan. He was hit on the head again. For that, Akisame the master grinned. Xavier Institute at night. Wolverine snapped awake with a growl. Logan saw that he was lying on his bedroom floor. He touched his own head and the others. That nightmare had been more real. All he remembered seeing last night was a mountain and the face of an odd doctor. Angrily, he slammed his fist to the ground. Oh no. He detested having few memories of his past. The following morning, Kitty was using her computer while she sat in the kitchen. She needed a quiet place to write to her parents because she felt like doing so. Finding a peaceful spot in the mansion is difficult. The noise level of the other residents is high. On the other hand, she was sitting in the kitchen with Mr. Logan, who was reading his paper quietly. She looked at him and a smile came to her face. Logan raised his head. Am I reading too loud for you? No, Kitty grinned. I am just enjoying the peace and quiet. The kitchen doors exploded open as the others came in for breakfast. The kitchen began to fill with noise. Kitty let out a sigh. Rather than taking a break, she ought to have continued writing. Take a break. Professor Xavier rolled in Logan's direction and said, Logan, what is wrong? Logan paced in a circular motion. I don't know. There was this report on Mount McKenna and it set something off inside of me. Professor Xavier gave me a stern look and said, I see, let me take a look, but I will need you to calm down and relax. Yeah, easy for you to say. Logan sat down and tried to unwind. Logan's head was touched by Professor Xavier's hand. Logan let out a moan as his mind was filled with memories. It displayed him with several tubes fastened to his body and in a tube full of green liquid. Professor Xavier's hand dropped. It seems this is a memory, not a nightmare. A memory from when you first received your implements. Do you wish for me to continue? I need to know, Logan said with a stern expression. Logan's head was touched by Professor Xavier's hand. The memories returned this time. Logan was seen in Mount McKenna's forest. Another familiar mutant showed up, accompanied by a man dressed in black. Logan gave his temples a rub. Thanks. Professor Xavier looked knowingly at him. I take it you will be going to investigate, he said. Logan got up and said, Get that while in my head? Do you want company? Logan turned to leave. Do I ever? X-Jet. Kitty typed on her computer. I've finally found a nice quiet place. As she began writing about Professor Kushina, she grinned. Whoa, it didn't sound good at all to type professor with her name. Professor Xavier, Mr. Logan, and Professor Munro are all completely different from Kushina. She resembles an older sister. Kitty chuckled as she recalled the constant arguments between Naruto and Kushina. She was a great admirer of Kushina. The woman has no fear. Kushina never hesitates to voice her opinions and confront people. Kushina wasn't even scared of Mr. Logan. Kitty aspired to be as strong as Kushina one day. However, she didn't want to start fighting with everyone who insulted her, as Kushina occasionally did. What you doing? Ah! Kitty exclaimed in alarm. Naruto was seated on the X-Jet's ceiling. When she looked up, Naruto waved lightly before settling into the chair beside her. Do you have to scare me like that? Naruto smiled. It is a bit fun, I swear, like it is impossible to find a nice quiet place here, said Kitty. Naruto gave the suggestion, can always use my room. Kitty's cheeks turned red. What? He gave a shrug. I barely ever use it. Kurt and Scott don't room with me because I tend to leave my weapons out, so I have the whole room to myself. I spend most of my time in the danger room or outside, so feel free to use it whenever you want. Kitty grinned. Naruto is a really kind and sincere person when he isn't making jokes. She nodded. Naruto smiled. Thanks, I'll do that. The jet trembled before the two could say anything more. Soon, with them inside, it began to take off. The pilot's seat was occupied by Wolverine this time. He will discover the truth. He let out a growl as his head ached in agony. The man clutched his head. Hey, who is flying? Naruto hesitated briefly. Claws, you okay? With a growl, Wolverine clutched his head in agony and asked, Why are you following me? Claws exploded from his knuckles. Gulping. Mr. Logan? Kitty asked. The claws pulled back with a stumble. Wolverine said, My head, get away. On their approach after grabbing Kitty, Naruto leapt back and pressed the door's button. They were sealed into the cargo hold as it slid up. Naruto's gaze was stern. Something isn't right. Kitty swallowed. Like you think so? Mount McKenna's covert laboratory. Gazing at the video screens, the scientist grinned. It depicted Wolverine moving directly toward them through the snow. The scientist grinned and said, I did such good work back then. The chip I put in Wolverine's head is still working. Sabretooth snarled. How come it took so long to work? Through sheer will, Logan has managed to fight its effects. Then why it is working now? Sabretooth looked glumly. All that time he has spent with Xavier has made him let down his guard, plus that little incident on televisions must have rejogged his memory. Good work by the way, Bigfoot, laughed the researcher at the name. Sabretooth gave a fierce snarl. Take a break. Shadowcat sprinted in Naruto's direction down the ramp. The transmission is being blocked. I can't reach the institute. This snow irritated Naruto. His ability to touch the ground is being impeded. Only when his finger touched the ground directly could he feel other people's presence. His mother informed him that both his father and the second Hokage possessed this ability. We will have to track him the old-fashioned way, Naruto said. Are you sure this is a good idea? Like Mr. Logan isn't in the best state of mind right now, replied Kitty with concern. Naruto smiled as he moved forward, saying, that is why we got to help Claus. As a friend of mine, I always help my friends when they are in trouble. Kitty followed him with a smile. Take a break. Wolverine continued to make his way to the mountain's summit. He stopped and took a whiff of the air as Sabretooth charged at him. He whirled around. Growling, Wolverine was tackled into the snow by Sabretooth. Sabretooth was kicked away by Wolverine. It's been a while. Logan, it's time to get this done. Sabretooth grinned. Wolverine charged forward, declaring, I'll rip you to shreds. After deflecting a blow, Sabretooth threw Wolverine into a tree. Wolverine leapt forward, spearing Sabretooth after flipping, touching feet first, to the side of the tree. Wolverine's claw shot out, and there was a snick in the air. No more playing around. Wolverine swung the deadly weapon, but someone else raised their voice. Hello, Wolverine. Wolverine turned to face the black-clad figure he remembered last night. He had a nightmare about the same man. The scientist produced a device and said, It's nice to see you, old friend. I think it's time you rejoin the cause. The scientist turned the dial with a smirk on his face. Ah! Wolverine screamed in agony. Clutching his head, Wolverine collapsed to the ground. Sabretooth grinned. Night. Wolverine was knocked unconscious by a kick to the back of the head. Weapon X. The scientist approached Wolverine, who was motionless, and said, It is good to have you back, Wolverine. When you left I was quite disappointed. That adamantium skeleton represents quite the investment. Sabretooth stepped into the space. He gave Wolverine a quick look. He let out a growl because killing that man was all he wanted, but not like this. He would demonstrate his superiority in combat by killing Wolverine. When Wolverine was defeated by Sabretooth, he would realize his mistake. The researcher approached the computers. Are the test subjects in place? Everything is ready. Sabretooth grinned when Wolverine saw a picture of Naruto and Kitty. His gaze snapped to the screen. He attempted to lift his arms as his eyes grew wide. No. He let out a growl. Wolverine's mind was overridden by the chip in his head. When the scientist turned the dial, Wolverine soon calmed down. Time for Weapon X to reactivate as the ultimate mutant hunters, the scientist grinned. Take a break. Shadowcat and Naruto made their way up the mountain as Wolverine emerged from a fog at the top of a cliff. The two stopped. Mr. Logan. Shadowcat grinned, raising his arm. Naruto prevented Shadowcat from approaching. Sabretooth emerged from behind Wolverine. A look of surprise filled Shadowcat's eyes. Aren't they like total enemies? Naruto. Kitty gets out of here, commanded. Shadowcat gave Naruto a startled look. When she looked into his eyes, she saw no humor or playfulness, an intense gaze that is entirely fixed on Wolverine and Sabretooth. Sabretooth and Wolverine rushed forward. Naruto threw 6 shuriken with a wave of his arm. He made a series of seals with his hands. Naruto thrust his hand forward and said, Futon Repusho, wind release. Violent wind palm. The shuriken were hit by a powerful wind gust, which caused them to spin and fly more quickly, raising his claws. Wolverine deflected 2 of them while a third slashed his cheek. 2 shuriken struck Sabretooth in the chest, and a third struck him in the arm, causing him to roar in agony. Naruto rushed ahead. Naruto leapt over it and landed behind Wolverine. As Wolverine swiped at him, Naruto turned around as Wolverine did. As Naruto stayed behind Wolverine, claws struck the air. Then he grabbed his arm and whirled around, throwing him into a charging Sabretooth. After jumping over Wolverine, Sabretooth dove at Naruto with his feet rising. Naruto flipped backwards and struck Sabretooth in the jaw. My arm isn't broken this time, Naruto said with a smile. I hope you brought more than claws to help you. Sabretooth grinned. Once I finish with you, I'll have some fun with that girl. With a cry of rage, Naruto said, I won't let you touch her. Slamming his knee into Sabretooth's stomach, he leapt forward. A torrent of kicks and punches slammed into Sabretooth, causing him pain throughout. Naruto took hold of Sabretooth's arm, jerked it, and then twisted it around. The air was filled with a cracking sound. Oh! Cried Sabretooth, in agony. Naruto was slashed across the back by Wolverine. Naruto! Kitty exclaimed in excruciating pain. Naruto let go of Sabretooth and leapt backward. Naruto collapsed to his knees, saying, I let my anger get the best of me. It would have been fatal if it had been any deeper. Shadowcat sprinted in Wolverine's direction. She stood in front of him and said, Please stop, Mr. Logan. It's us, Kitty and Naruto. We're friends of yours. Raising his claws, Wolverine aimed them at Shadowcat's throat. Naruto stiffened. Sabretooth rushed in Shadowcat's direction. Sabretooth flew into a tree after being kicked by a hurricane. Naruto clenched his jaw in agony. Wolverine snarled. Shadowcat's eyes were filled with fear as she gazed at him. Please don't become this monster. The Mr. Logan I know is tough, but he cares for all of us at the Institute. Kitty, Wolverine gritted his teeth. Wolverine clutched his head in agony and roared. Before long, he stopped when Wolverine turned around. Shadowcat watched Wolverine ran up the mountain and said, "Thanks, half pint." Sabretooth snarled. "Wolverine, you traitor!" Sabretooth's kneecaps were pierced by a pair of kunai. Rule number 1 in combat: never take your eyes off an opponent, Naruto said with a grin. He turned to face Shadowcat. Kitty, go after Claws. Make sure he doesn't do anything stupid. Shadowcat said, "Right," and started to run after Wolverine. In front of Sabretooth, Naruto threw a kunai that pierced the earth. He gave Sabretooth a wink while forming a hand seal. Boom! The mountains erupted in an explosion when the smoke cleared. Sabretooth was lying unconscious and covered in wounds. Weakly, Naruto got to his feet and started toward Wolverine and Shadowcat. "I am a little too careless. Master Akisame is correct without putting up a fight." Kitty defeated Claws. She spoke to him, and he would remember the lesson he had learned today. Take a break. The mountain's summit erupted in a massive explosion. Wolverine and Shadowcat observed as the lab burst into flames in front of him. Wolverine watched as the establishment that had destroyed his life was demolished. After taking a whiff of the air, he looked back to see Naruto approaching them with a slight limp. Kitty rushed to Naruto and said, "Naruto." Naruto grinned. "I am fine. You okay, brat?" Wolverine inquired. Naruto smiled and said, "Yeah, it is my own fault. I won't let it happen again." Kitty surveyed the demolished laboratory. "Do you think that man escaped?" Wolverine's eyes narrowed. Claws exploded. He better hope that he didn't. He pivoted and draped Naruto's arm across his shoulders. "Let's get out of here." Bavel High Lance proceeded down the corridor. He saw Kitty. His face lit up with a smile before they focused on the boy beside her. Kitty and Naruto were conversing. They both started laughing. Anger flooded his eyes. Kitty gave a headshake. "No way. I'm serious." Naruto was on the verge of falling to the floor. "Sorry, didn't see you," Lance said with a sly smile. "Don't be such a jerk, Lance." Kitty scowled. Naruto smiled. "If you want to fight, just say the word. I'll gladly kick your ass in front of the entire school." Naruto was confronted by Lance. Naruto's fist exploded, hitting Lance in the face as he said, "Bring it on." Lance landed like a bag of potatoes on the ground. Lance rolled on the ground and let out a groan. "Mr. Namikaze." "Mrs. Wilson," exclaimed Naruto. Uttered, "What?" "He told me to bring it." Kitty gave Naruto a fierce look. She narrowed her eyes when he gave her a sheepish smile. He let out a sigh. "I know I shouldn't have let him bait me, but he was asking for it." Kitty gave her foot a tap. "That isn't an excuse, and I don't like reckless fighting." Naruto gave a nod. "I'm sorry." Naruto was approached by Mrs. Wilson. "You are coming with me to the principal's office." "Yes, ma'am." Kitty gave Lance a downward glance. She let out a sigh. Lance needed to control his jealousy. Even though he was a good guy when he wanted to be, Naruto and Scott are not the same. While Naruto doesn't back down from a challenge, Scott will not continue to fight back. Kitty said, "I don't like jerks either," as Lance lay on the ground with his face held in his hands. Take a break. Rogue went to give Kushina a punch. Kushina slackly deflected the blow. A high kick followed a second and third punch before Rogue was knocked to the ground by a palm strike to the chest. Each one was blocked. Rogue complained, "Why'd I even bother?" Kushina grinned. "It is because you don't have any long-range powers to learn. Hand-to-hand combat is a must. Don't worry. Kitty and Kurt are taking the same lessons as you." When Rogue said, "That doesn't make me feel any better," she stood up. "After we are done here, we can go shopping or see a movie. I'll let you choose." Kushina replied. Rogue grinned. The lesson was continued by the two. In the control room, Professor Xavier observed the two. His face lit up with a smile. Rogue and Kushina had grown close. The relationship was like that of sisters. Rogue held Kushina in high regard. Rogue was viewed by Kushina as the younger sister she had always desired but never had. That Rogue is actually coming out of her shell makes him happy because of her mutant ability to keep people away from her. Rogue had a more difficult time than the others. "I am going to work on a seal that can block mutant powers. That way Rogue will be able to have a real life and not just sit in the background watching others," Kushina said. Professor Xavier turned and walked away, leaving the two women alone. "I hope you succeed, Kushina." Take a break. A red Dodge Viper sped up the path as the Institute's gates opened. It went up the path smoothly and stopped in front of the Institute. Scott leapt from the steering wheel. "All right," he said, sliding across the hood and sprinting into the Institute. Jean shouted, "Scott, you forgot your bag." Scott rushed into the Institute without hearing her. The girl let out a sigh. She opened the door and got out of the car, saying, "More like left it." She turned when she heard rustling. She scowled as something moved. "Kurt, is that you?" Jean heard another rustling sound as she passed some bushes. She scowled. As she turned her head, she folded her arms across her chest and asked, "Toad, what are you doing here?" Toad jumped over Jean and grabbed a branch, then landed behind her, just getting a jump on the competition. He said. He swept Jean's legs out from under her with a swing. Jean let out a gasp and collapsed. "Aha, take that." Jean's eyes took on an angry expression. "Toad," she exclaimed, lifting her hand and using telekinetic energy to blast Toad backward. She insisted, "What do you think you are doing?" He must be aware that his chances of defeating her are slim. He's here, but why? Jean arched an eyebrow as Toad frowned. "Going to prove I am a champ, not a chump. We all have to." What was meant by that? Toad held up the branch and leapt at her. She used her psychic abilities to catch Toad in midair. As she raised her hand, blasted backwards into a tree. Toad let out a scream. He fell to the floor. Jean let out a sigh because she was genuinely opposed to doing that. A metal sphere fell between her and Toad just as she was going to approach him to see how he was doing. When it opened, her eyes grew wide out of it. Metal tentacles wrapped themselves around her limbs. She started to say, "What?" but was dragged inside as the sphere closed. It took off for an unknown destination. Toad screamed, "No," as he saw the sphere take off. "I could have won. It should have been me." The Cerebro. Logan stepped into the brand new Cerebro. At the end of the metal walkway was the console. Where Xavier sat, he moved in Charles's direction. "You call me?" Be honest, he wasn't a big fan of telepathy, too intrusive, but he made an exception because Charles was the only person he trusted. "Yes," Xavier said, taking Cerebro away. "A new mutant has appeared, this one in Hawaii." Logan questioned, "So what's the big emergency?" The message had sounded urgent. Xavier gestured toward the image, a boy who resembled a stereotypical surfer, with long shoulder-length blonde hair, and who appeared to be around 13 or 14 years old. "His name is Alex Masters, formerly known as Alex Summers, Scott's younger brother," said Xavier. Logan sighed. "Younger brother? I thought Scott was the only one to survive the plane crash." "It seems Alex managed to survive as well. He has been staying with foster parents in Hawaii. I'll contact Scott and have him meet us in the hangar," stated Xavier. Logan turned to leave. Logan turned to Charles and said, "And Logan, prepare for trouble. I highly doubt we're the only ones interested in Alex." The hangar. The X-jet came to life. Its engines sprang into action as the jet took off. Kurt yelled, "Hey!" and dashed into the hangar behind Kurt. Rogue, Kitty, and Naruto dashed in. Kurt complained, "Aw man, I thought we were going to Hawaii." "Man, what a bummer." Kitty scowled. Rogue frowned. "Well, this sucks." Naruto smiled. "There isn't a beach too far from here. My mom is out and Storm is in Africa. I say we take the van and go have our own little party." "I knew there is a reason we are friends." Kurt grinned. Kitty grinned. "I am totally in." "All right," Rogue grinned. "Take a break." Kushina stretched her arms above her head as she entered through the front door. With each step, her high heels clicked as she entered. The woman was dressed nicely in a black dress that hugged her curves and ended mid-thigh. The date with that Michael guy had been pleasant, but she didn't like how nice he had been. She let out a sigh. Her soulmate had been Minato. He had a way of filling her heart that no one else could. A lovely tabby cat approached Kushina by walking down the front steps and saying, "Meow." Kushina dropped to his knees. She drew a kunai from inside her dress and spun it around, saying, "Aren't you cute?" Kushina struck the kunai down, driving it into the ground. "Too bad, I hate cats," he said. The cat jumped back and changed into Mystique. Kushina grinned and said, "Didn't I already kick your ass?" Mystique's eyes narrowed. "I shouldn't even have to prove myself, but I couldn't turn down the chance to pay you back." Kushina laughed. Mystique sprinted forward, kicking her heel in a spinning motion. 3 regular kicks came after it before rolling under the final kick. Kushina raised her arms to block the next 3 and leaned back to avoid the heel kick. "If you are going to challenge me again, at least get a bit better before you do," said Kushina. "Crazy bitch," propelled Mystique ahead. Anger filled Kushina's eyes. The two women rushed at each other after receiving a kick. Kushina whirled around and slammed Mystique against the adjacent wall. With her teeth clenched, Mystique whirled around, sweeping out Kushina's legs. Mystique kicked Kushina with an axe, and Kushina rolled back. Mystique threw a right hook at Kushina, but Kushina deflected the blow. Mystique felt a knee dig into her stomach, causing pain. Kushina delivered a second blow by lowering one knee and raising the other. Mystique's mouth spat blood, and her eyes grew wide. Kushina grabbed Mystique's hair and slammed her face against the wall, saying, "No calls me crazy." Mystique collapsed to the ground, unconscious. Kushina inhaled deeply. "You almost ruined my dress. If you had done that, I would have really killed you." Through the roof a metal sphere crashed. 4 metal tentacles emerged as it opened up. The unconscious woman was thrown into them by Kushina, who grabbed Mystique. Mystique was seized by the tentacles and drawn into the sphere. The sphere exploded into the air after closing up. Not liking this at all, Kushina asked, What is going on? Hawaii. The beaches were where the X-Jet touched down. Scott shouted his brother's name as he ran down the gangplank. As soon as it lowered, Logan moved down the plank with composure behind Logan. Xavier rolled down it. Scott sprinted over and knelt on a surfboard. Do you think it belongs to him? Maybe, Logan said. Logan followed a set of footprints he saw in the sand. They ended at the edge of the cliff. Looks like company dropped in on him literally and left the same way. Who? Scowled Scott. Magneto. Logan growled and sniffed the air. Who is Magneto? Scott inquired. The X-Jet began to move on its own a few seconds after Logan snarled. I have a feeling you are about to find out. When Xavier made an unsuccessful attempt to move it, Logan and Scott's eyes widened. Logan screamed, "Arg!" and leapt onto the jet, holding on with his claws. Scott's eyes were wide as he watched. How could a mutant lift an entire jet? Even Jean, one of the strongest mutants he knew, couldn't accomplish that. When a shadow fell over the boy, he had little time to wonder. He pivoted and squinted at the individual. Alex. Scott. Alex. The two brothers rushed to one another and gave each other a fraternal embrace. I had dreams like this, Alex chuckled. I can't believe it. Scott looked closely at his brother and said, Me too, but this is definitely not a dream. Man, you have grown so much. What happened to my scrawny little brother? Alex laughed. Not so scrawny anymore. I still can't believe you are here. Magneto was telling the truth. Wait, did you say Magneto? You were with him? He just kidnapped my professor, said Scott. Alex led Scott up a small cliff where a metal sphere rested on the ground. No, you got it all wrong. He just wants to show him something. Show us all something. Come on, Alex said. Alex raised his hands, one of which turned red with heat, and said, Magneto told me that you were a mutant, and so am I. I got these powers in me. I was really freaked out until Magneto explained it all to me. He has something that is going to help me. I am going to meet with him. Come with me. This did not sit well with Scott, however. Alex appeared to have a lot of faith in Magneto. Alex grinned and the two climbed into the sphere, saying, I don't like this, but I'll come with you just to make sure you are safe. Then it closed and took off. The beach. Kurt stuck his head out the window and exclaimed, Party time. Yeah. Kitty chuckled. Naruto turned around the corner and smiled. Rogue raised an eyebrow, wondering why Naruto cared about getting into trouble. We are going to get into so much trouble. She grinned and said, but it'll be so worth it. The van turned the corner. The ground started to tremble abruptly in an attempt to keep control. Naruto tightened his grip on the wheel. He squinted at the Blob, who was blocking the way with a sly smile. Blob spread his arms, caught the van skidding backward a few feet, picked it up, and threw it onto the beach. Quicksilver gave a grin. Too easy. The driver's side door flew off, rubbing her head. Kitty stepped out of the van. Rogue and Kurt teleported away, jumping off the driver's side. Naruto did so. Now you pissed me off, Naruto snarled. Avalanche grinned. I am going to make you pay for sucker punching me. I don't care if you got a problem with me, but putting my friends in danger, I won't ever forgive that. Naruto yelled with rage. He was surrounded by swirling chakra avalanches. Terrified eyes grew wide. Naruto was in front of him one moment, and then his knee was buried in Avalanche's stomach. The next avalanche was launched through the air by a right hook and struck the sand with force. Blob rushed in Kurt's direction. I don't think so, Kurt said with a sly smile before teleporting off. Kurt was struck across the face by a right hook from Quicksilver, who moved too quickly for him to follow. Kurt collapsed to the sand, unconscious. At Rogue, Toad leapt in order to avoid the tongue. Rogue leapt back. Toad jumped at Rogue and declared, I am going to get picked. Rogue kicked Toad in the jaw while spinning around on her heel. The Toad struck the sand motionless. Rogue scowled. Don't even consider touching me, slime ball. Blob gave you a backhand, saying, Got you? Kitty let out a cry as she soared through the air. Slamming into the sand, she lay motionless. Naruto forcefully slammed Avalanche to the ground after flipping him over his back. Those little temper tantrums won't work on me. Avalanche lay unconscious, not even hearing a word. Naruto got ready to attack Quicksilver and Blob until 4 metal spheres struck the shore. That is, each of the spheres released 4 tentacles as they opened up. As the tentacles seized Naruto, he brought his hands together just as he was about to use a jutsu. He saw Rogue pull into a sphere after closing. The sphere took off, his hands dropped to his sides, and a stern expression came into his eyes. The spheres that held Rogue and Naruto flew away as Quicksilver and Blob entered them. The Asteroid M. As the asteroid entered view, Xavier watched. It had a very sophisticated facility on it and appeared to be at least 3 miles wide, a metal-only city in the middle part of nowhere. Magneto had undoubtedly been working on this for a while. The hangar was where the X-Jet touched down. As the gangplank slowed, Xavier's wheelchair moved on its own. Magneto waited outside. Welcome, Xavier, to Asteroid M, Magneto said with a smile. As Xavier put it, why have you brought me here, Magneto? Xavier was unable to use his telepathy on the mutant genius as long as Magneto was wearing that helmet. Magneto turned and started to move farther into the building unwillingly. Xavier followed. I have brought you here to offer you sanctuary as we speak. Your X-Men and my own recruits are fighting to earn the right to stay here. Only those who are strong enough will earn the right to stay in sanctuary. Xavier was grinning. His old friend didn't seem to have changed. As you know, mankind will learn of us eventually, and when they do they will fear us because we are the future. The pair discovered a pair of doors. Xavier's eyes widened as the steel doors slid open. Jean, Evan, and Aurora were restrained in a cyrostasis tube. When Xavier turned to look at them, the Juggernaut, his brother, was of the same type. What is this, Magneto? You aren't saving them, you are abducting them, replied Xavier. He looked over and saw Quicksilver, Blob, and Avalanche grinning. Magneto's expression turned to a smirk as Scott and Alex walked in. Xavier's eyes grew wide. For every non-believer there is a convert. The words, Scott, I don't understand, Xavier said. Wait, we are just here to listen is all, said Scott, raising his hands. Xavier pointed to Jean, Naruto, and Rogue and asked, and what about them? Are they here to listen to? Scott's gaze expanded. His eyes began to glow as he whirled around. He insisted, what is the meaning of this? Let them go. Smiling, Avalanche took a step forward. Magneto shoved Avalanche out of the way. Do not worry, they are perfectly safe. They merely don't have the maturity to accept change like you do, Magneto said. Scott, are they safe? Are any of us secure? Magneto recognized what Xavier was doing and raised his hand, saying, I've known this man for a long time, and I can't trust his motives. As he was rolled backward onto a metal platform, Xavier gasped. A tube descended from the sky. A gas filled the chamber, knocking out the telepath as Xavier attempted to contact the others. Scott grabbed his shades and asked, what are you doing? Let them go now. If you fire that, you will kill them, Magneto declared. Scott said, then I will deal with you, pointing to Magneto. Alex moved to separate the two and said, hey Scott, calm down. Listen, you can't blame Magneto for being careful. I don't know what is going on either, but he just wants to help and I need his help, so please, stop. Scott lowered his hands reluctantly. I don't like it. Your brother is right, Magneto said with a smile. I am not your enemy, nor am I Charles's enemy, I promise. In due time, it will all be clear. The Xavier Institute. When Kushina turned around after hearing a noise, she saw a battered Logan enter through the front doors. She arched an eyebrow. Logan snarled. Magneto captured the professor. I don't know where Scott is. Yeah, but he isn't the one you fought, Kushina acknowledged, gesturing to the clothes that were ripped apart. Logan paused before her and raised his gaze to the ceiling. I am not the only one who had to fight. Magneto is holding some type of contest, having mutants to fight against mutants. The winners are taken to some special location. He looked at her. Did you lose? Kushina smiled. No way, I beat that blue bitch to a pulp. I wasn't about to let myself get captured, so I tossed her into the sphere and it flew off. Kushina. Logan. Kurt and Kitty ran through the front doors as the two adults turned around knowing the answer. Kushina asked, what happened to you two? Brotherhood. Kurt frowned. Yeah, like they totally jumped us then. When we came to they were gone along with Naruto and Rogue, Kitty replied. Kurt grinned. At least we weren't the only ones left behind. Avalanche and Toad limped all the way back home. Naruto and Rogue got them good. They all turned to watch Logan, looking worse for wear, enter the institute and say, Magneto has them. He looked at Kurt and Kitty. We are going after them, Logan declared. The Asteroid M. Scott sat on the balcony, staring at nothing in particular. He began to recall the day his family perished in that aircraft accident. Both his father and mother perished when the plane crashed. He recalled that before he could grasp Alex's hands, the wind sucked him out as he reached for his brother. He had lost everything that day. Alex said, hey bro, what you doing out here? Just thinking, remembering the crash. I thought you were dead. I'm sorry I didn't come looking for you, said Scott. Alex laughed. It's cool, man. Besides, my foster parents are cool. I miss mom and dad. Me too. It's strange, I have been having this burning in my joints for as long as I could remember. None of the doctors could tell me what is wrong. I had no idea what was happening with me until Magneto showed up. He promised to help me, Alex said. Scott scowled. Magneto. He recalled what the professor had said to him before. How did he promise to help you? They both turned to face Magneto and said, not just him, but everyone. Scott and Alex trailed behind Magneto as he entered the facility, saying, come with me. It is time I tell you both of my plan to help mutants. Off to the side, the Brotherhood stood. And now Sabretooth joined them. Magneto indicated a steel door leading into a room. Magneto produced a crimson gem the size of his hand and said, I have created this chamber to further evolve mutants like ourselves into our final stage. This is the legendary Gems of Cyrac. It emits a unique radiation. Wait, you are going to nuke us? Alex exclaimed. Alex was touched by Magneto. I am going to help you, no more pain, no more hiding behind those visors, I will give you control over your mutations. Scott pointed to his professors and friends and asked, what about them? Release them. I will, but not until they see what I am offering, and it is an offer. I will not force you to do it if you don't want to, Scott, Magneto replied. Then you do it. Sabretooth approached the room and said, I already have, I am fully evolved, but perhaps a demonstration. Sabretooth. Radiation began to glow from it. The mutant entered the chamber with a smirk on his face. After Sabretooth, the steel door shut. Scott and Alex watched as the room began to light up. After a minute, Sabretooth came out of the room, a different person standing a foot taller. Sabretooth had a more animal than human appearance. He has a very muscular build, dirty blonde fur all over his body, and claws for hands and feet. Magneto said, see, he's fully evolved now, it's your turn. The younger Summer brother rubbed his hand that was burning. I want to, but not without you, Alex remarked. Scott nodded, and the two made their way to the room. Magneto grinned as he raised his hand. The gas that was keeping the X-Men asleep ceased, and the audience applauded. They all began to awaken gradually. Jean was the first to awaken, and her eyes grew wide. Scott, no, she said, but her voice was muffled behind the glass. Scott. Hearing the professor's voice in his mind, Scott whirled around. Now leave that place, Magneto. I'm sure that chamber will change your mind. When Scott attempted to exit, the steel door closed. Magneto declared, Charles, it's too late, he's mine now. Naruto squinted as he tried to come up with a solution. Charles looked sad as he watched Jean tried to break free, but the glass was unaffected by her fist. Scott's compliance with Magneto's request astounded Rogue. After a minute, figures emerged through the steel door. Jean's eyes went wide with fear. Both Scott and Alex now had white hair and appeared to be fully grown men. Alex grinned and said, amazing, I don't feel any pain. Go on, Scott, show us the color of your eyes, Magneto said with a sly smile. Scott's eyes were light blue when he took off his glasses. Magneto approached Alex. Your name is now Havoc. I have removed useless things such as emotions. This will give you a clear view of our superiority. There was a beep sound. Aircraft, Sabretooth said. Really? Let's see who it is. A black helicopter appeared as the ceiling opened. Magnet held up his hand. He was surprised that nothing occurred. His second attempt yielded the same outcome. Magneto asked Xavier, who grinned, no metal. Scott and Alex went outside and said, boys, take care of our unwelcome guests. Naruto looked down at his hand on the right. He was not carrying any ninja gear. He was aware of one method that could be useful to him. His eyes took on a focused, determined expression. His right hand started to whirl with chakra. Wolverine enlarged the picture of two people until one of the men's eyes began to glow red. He didn't recognize them at all. Scott. The X-copter was struck by two strong beams. It crashed in the direction of the men after one of the wings was destroyed. As the X-copter crashed through the building, Scott and Alex sprinted. Scott. Jean threw them both aside before they were crushed by using her psychic abilities. Rasengan. Naruto held a fully developed chakra sphere. He extended his hand. The glass broke into fragments. With his claws out, Wolverine exploded from the jet with a roar. Sabretooth rushed forward. Wolverine slammed into Sabretooth's chest, and a smirk came to his face. Wolverine's eyes flashed with surprise, but then they were filled with pain as Sabretooth backhanded him across the room. Professor X's tube was broken by a kick that Kushina delivered as he ran forward, and Jean and Rogue's tubes were broken by Naruto's fist. We must leave this place, Professor X declared. Magneto said, I don't think so, and held up his hand. Professor X was struck by flying metal wires, which Naruto cut to pieces with a kunai as he appeared in front of him. Then he threw 6 shuriken at Magneto with a swing of his arm. They flew back at Naruto as Magneto used his powers. Naruto was struck by the shuriken. Naruto became a log in a cloud of smoke. Swiftly, Quicksilver hurried to Nightcrawler. He seized the Nightcrawler and exclaimed, I got you. Rogue took off her glove and touched Quicksilver's face, saying, no, I have you. With a cry of agony, Quicksilver fell to the ground. Nightcrawler gave his arms a massage, thanks. A figure of Kushina emerged before Blob. Blob rushed at Kushina and yelled, get out of my way. She stepped aside and touched his back. She broke into a smile. Kushina made a seal with his hands. Blob's back seal came into action. Blob exclaimed, ah. As lightning sped through his body, Blob passed out. Wolverine struck the wall with a fly. Wolverine was held against the wall by a hand that grabbed him. No escape. Logan. Sabretooth grinned after a psychic attack on his mind. Sabretooth was never able to launch the attack. Sabretooth screamed in agony and dropped to his knees. Gripping his head, Professor X exerted a little more force, and Sabretooth fell to the ground motionless. The X-jet is located in the south hangar. Professor X declared, get the others to it. Magneto threw a variety of objects at Naruto. While narrowing his eyes, Naruto maneuvered between every object. "Your powers are great, join me and we can bring about a new age where mutants can live in peace," Magneto said. Naruto sealed his hand, saying, "I'll never join you. Bunshin no jutsu." Magneto discovered that clones were all around him. All of the clones were destroyed when Magneto raised both arms and sent out a strong magnetic wave. Magneto's face lit up with confusion as he failed to locate the real one. A shadow descended from the sky. Magneto raised his gaze to meet Naruto's stony eyes. "Rasengan." Naruto stung Magneto's chest with the whirling ball of chakra. The master of magnetism was filled with pain. Unlike anything Magneto had ever experienced, the ground that Magneto was drilled into actually collapsed. Naruto jumped backwards to end the attack. Any more would have resulted in the man's death unless he had no other option. He wouldn't kill. He made that commitment a long time ago. The debris Jean had been trying to move was blown away by a beam of red and orange. Alex and Scott climbed out of the wreckage. "Look at what you have done. You ruined everything." Scott glared at Professor Xavier and Jean together. Jean let out a startled gasp. "Ruined everything? Look at yourself. I don't even recognize you anymore. I am evolved. My powers are at my mercy. I am the future." Jean's eyes took on a dejected expression. Jean turned to leave, saying, "If this is the future, then I won't know part of it." Xavier gave Scott a direct glance. The professor whirled around and trailed the others to the X-Jet, saying, "Mutants should be united, but we are not the ones drawing the line. Magneto is, and you have crossed it." With a glance at Xavier, Wolverine asked, "What about the boys?" Xavier stated, "They have to make their own choice." Naruto, anyone left behind? Naruto touched the ground with his finger. Magneto and Sabretooth. Then, Xavier said, "Let's go." Naruto noticed Alex and Scott sprinting in their direction. Naruto materialized between the two boys and touched each of their arms. In a sudden blur, all three of them vanished in a whirl of leaves. Before they could react, Wolverine and Xavier arrived. Just as the three of them reappeared beside the X-Jet, Alex and Scott puked before diving in. Naruto threw them inside. The Xavier Institute. Scott and Alex are lying on the ground after using up all of their energy in the danger room. They had returned to normal a day ago. Magneto's power boost appeared to be short-lived. To evolve, one required continuous boosts. Kushina questioned, "Are they going to be okay?" Xavier, the professor, nodded. "Yes, all traces of radiation have disappeared." Logan's forehead furrowed. "What I want to know is what happened to Mystique. She should have been up there." Kushina scowled. "I don't know."
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.